PMP.
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 All right,
Project management.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. It's November 14th. First thing on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. We're gonna get started with a roll call. Samantha.
Samantha Kearns.
Laura Stevens.
Israel Carey.
Doug Pounds.
Mark Bernard.
You're going to introduce the staff or not?
I-
We do that
after
later.
the roll call,
Okay. Jared Talbot, School Board Rep.
Joe Alexander.
Frank Hobbs.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Rep.
Olivia Welcher.
Elizabeth DeBrule.
Brian Mazer.
Peter Grigorakakis. Richard Manzo.
Allison DeCesare.
And we have Scott Gross and Doug Todd here for staff support. I think we have a full committee tonight, so that's really exciting. So, yay, everyone. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. The minutes aren't drafted yet, so we're going to push that off. Okay, so we're going to continue the deliberation. So we finished on page 25, about halfway done. My goal is to try to get through Maple Ave, Mountain View, Glen Lake, and then we can wrap it up. It depends how fast we're going. So like last meeting, we started slow and then picked it up. So we're gonna play it by ear, but I want to make sure the committee has enough time to deliberate how we see fit. Are there any questions, comments, or anything before we get started?
You can have it.
Alrighty. We're gonna get started at Maple Ave, which is location 102, halfway down page 25. Gotta get my ruler out. Thank you, Laura. Samantha.
Thank you. On line 649, I'm sure what we're renting is laptops because that seems like the trend. Is there any way to is it at all cheaper to buy whatever we're renting and have it?
They are lease purchases, so you do end up,
Oh, you end up getting them at the end
You
of the
do.
day? Okay. Thanks.
Okay, moving on, 26. Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to strike funding out of the budget for the social emotional learning teacher position at Maple Ave to include all relevant lines, including salary and benefits. The reason for this is the feedback I've received from fellow residents has been that social emotional learning should not be taught in the public schools on their dime, rather than with the parents.
Okay, is there a second to that? I'll second it. Discussion, members, Laura?
I know when we were on the tour, they spoke about how if they have a specific teacher to address behavior, kindness, expectations, things like that, then the classroom teachers can focus more on learning the subjects because they don't have to spend their time kind of teaching kids those executive functioning behaviors of participating in a classroom. And that is kind of a specialized thing. And I know prior to having that person, they said it was taking up a lot of learning time, and this was their way of kind of preventing that from continuing. So I think it's really important.
Elizabeth?
Frank, could you define for me what these parents or you think social emotional learning is?
Well, so, in general, it's it is putting social emotional learning on the same par with reading, writing, and arithmetic, and it has a risk of being subjective. You know, when you're teaching, you know, social emotional learning, there's a wide berth of where it could go. And most parents that I talk to were saying, I would prefer to teach that myself, and they see risks in it.
Okay, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you didn't actually define it.
You don't have to answer that.
You don't, but I mean, don't you think we should know what we're talking about before we make a decision?
Feel free to enlighten us if you'd like.
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering how we're talking about this if nobody can define it.
Well, if we can't define it, then why should we be funding it?
Well, I mean, that's on us if we can't define it. There is an actual definition for it.
There are several.
Well, but there's actual definition. It's a CASEL definition. It's a CASEL. So there is like a specific definition to it, and I think there's a lot of, this has become one of these buzzwords or buzz phrases that people use, and I don't think they actually know what it is. So I'm just curious if, like, before we vote, if we can define it, so we know what we're doing. Now, I mean, we could start with Scott or Doug. I mean, this is a school district position. If you can define what the school district thinks it is.
For one, that's the beauty of having Doug here, so I will punt a little bit to Doug, but I will share with you, because Doug was a middle school administrator. The school system uses a program called Second Step. We've been using Second Step, which is a social emotional learning platform, for many, many years. And what that does is it teaches our students a wide variety of things. Coping skills could be one, how to deal with grief, how to deal with conflict. And arguably, after COVID, this became, the need became much more prevalent, where students were having more emotional type issues. Teachers were spending more time with that. So the notion that perhaps this is a parent's obligation, I'm not going to argue with you, but is it being done at home? That's where I guess I could argue with you that there is a need in school where if teachers are spending a whole lot of time trying to get students the level of support that they need so they can learn, that becomes critical. So this is a program that is used from kindergarten all the way up to middle school. And we instituted this position after COVID because we thought it was needed. I will share with you that whether this particular position goes forward 5 years from now, I'd say it's probably unlikely. However, that being the case, we also have to recognize that we instituted it when we have 550 kids in a building that is pretty tight, and with that comes more types of issues. One position for guidance. So this is a situation where this person teaches those Second Step curriculum materials, which we've been doing for a long, long time, and does that in lieu of the teacher. So it allows the teacher to focus in on the core curriculum. And Doug, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to throw in.
Yeah, I mean, kids come to different locations with different readiness, whether that be sports, whether that be going to a friend's house, or whether that be to a school. And when you're at a school, there's different areas of the school which have different expectations, whether that be the library, the classroom, the cafeteria. So social emotional, it's about developing those skills, those coping skills. So no matter what situation you're in at a school, in this case, that you can achieve the results that go with your ability. Because sometimes we see kids who they can't persevere, they can't cope with their emotions, and therefore we don't get to see their ability in school to what they've actually garnered at that stage. So this allows for that to happen because it allows the kids to have confidence in where they are in a school, knowing that they can kind of participate in a way which is productive for them and for their classmates.
I'm going to let Jared go, and then Brian has his hand up, and I'll go around.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a question, because this wasn't tied to a specific line item, is this a functional 1,100 job or a 1,200 job? 1,200 being special ed and 1,100 being regular teaching?
I believe it's 1,100.
I was under the impression it was
1,100, yeah, it's regular ed. It's not.
Thank you.
All right, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. I guess for the committee, would it be helpful for me to read the definition by CASEL and what SEL is?
Sure.
All right. So the definition by Castle, we define social and emotional learning, SEL, as an integral part of education and human development. SEL is a process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to add? You all set?
Well, yeah, I think that where I'm confused in regards to maybe the SEL, and I think what you alluded to was the registered behavioral therapists that work with like students that have more behavioral issues. So where does one start and where does one end? Like to me, it almost looks like duplication of effort. So I'm trying to figure out, are both necessary? That's where I'm confused too, because I understand from the RBT perspective, but SEL, this seems a very lofty position that, even though it's a definition, is still not really defined well, because it's just life that you pick up in regards to if you have parents or a parent, or just in social constructs. I think it's something that's just not very well defined and structured.
Okay. So I'll
Yeah,
leave you.
no,
and then-
that's fine.
Okay.
I guess a couple of things. One, as far as where social emotional starts and behavioral ends, all children would be receiving social emotional. Not all children would be subject to the behavioral specialists. Another, we keep hearing over and over and over again from every single administrator, every single teacher, how much the kids are struggling, how much they've been struggling, especially since COVID, in schools that are too small for all of them, and struggling with that. So I'm not really understanding why it's a constant issue all the time to pull as much support to the kids to deal with these issues, rather than trying to solve some of the issues that are exacerbating them, like the space issues, like the lack of teachers and administrators to deal with the issues. Everybody keeps talking about bang for the buck, trying to get the best quality education at low prices. Teachers can't teach if nobody knows how to deal with the issues, and life doesn't end when kids leave home to go to school. They don't just switch over when they're at school. They need continued guidance, they need continued support and services, whether they're typically developing or whether they're kids that are struggling a little bit more. And that's it.
Laura?
Thank you. So the elephant is that social emotional learning has been taken and twisted to mean something that it doesn't. That's what we're talking about here. Like Scott said, the program they've been using for a long time. Social emotional learning isn't new. The way we talk about it has changed because people decided they wanted to change it. But it's always, since we've been in school, you learn kindness. You learn to keep your hands to yourselves. You learn how to, have a disagreement, appropriately in the school setting. Social emotional learning is not whatever is in people's minds as far as a negative, inappropriate thing. And we have to remember too that, maybe us sitting here, maybe we're lucky that we had parents that taught us that stuff, or we are parents that teach our kids that stuff. And unfortunately, not every kid has that. And every kid deserves that. And what better place where kids can kind of get that, like Brian, you said, it's life, right? It's just working through life. Kids have to do life at school, and that can be part of that. And I think it's not this scary thing that it's been made out to be.
Scott, is there a position for this at Bartlett as well, or is it just at Maple Ave?
It's just at Maple, and I think that's what gets lost in the context of all of this, is that we're seeing very high numbers at Maple Avenue School. You're seeing class sizes of 23, 24, 25 kids per class. The teacher that is teaching the Second Step program, and yes, it's SEL, but it's called Second Step, they teach that to the different classes, and it gives a little bit of a breathing room to the classroom teacher, give them a break a little bit. And that was another thing that we could not, due to space needs, we couldn't just put an extra classroom. We're tapped out there. But having this teacher who's teaching second step, it allows that teacher to give them a little bit of breathing room. I said, it usually, at the early grades, you might have 18, 19, 20 kids, not 24, 25, I think in some cases 26 kids. So we don't have a co-teacher or a teacher available to help in every single classroom, but it gives them a little bit of a breather. And hopefully, if we do see these classroom sizes trend to a more reasonable level, maybe we don't need this position going forward. But right now, you've seen the enrollments there. And that was another thing that was the rationale for that, was to try to deal with the overpopulation of Maple Avenue and not necessarily it being an obligation that parents should undertake. That's completely not it.
Thank you, Scott. Hold on, Jared and then Elizabeth.
Just as a clarifying question, so the main bulk of this cut is coming from line 654, as I understand it. I just want to confirm that for Maple's teacher salaries, because what this is effectively doing is this is going to be cutting staff with this motion to go from 25 teachers to 24 teachers. And I just want to make sure that clarity is accurate.
You're asking if that's the.
It's at the motion, yes.
That's the motion, yes.
To cut-
Salary and all budget,
So
all associated lines.
go from 25 teachers to 24 teachers.
Right.
Well, hold on, let me look.
Because if I go back to my Bartlett packet, it says that our current staffing is 24 classroom teachers and 1 social learning teacher, grades 1 through 4. So that's 25 teachers, and we're looking to reduce that from 25 to 24 with this motion.
Correct.
Okay.
Elizabeth?
So, I do actually professionally deal with a lot of curriculum matters, and I've seen a lot of social emotional learning, and like anything else, it can be well done or it can be badly done. And my opinion of it is, when it is done properly, within certain restrictions, and not too much time is spent on it, it dramatically expands students' capabilities to learn. Can it be overdone? Sure. It should never replace, like, real instruction in content matters and core subjects. And I'm not unsympathetic to parents who maybe don't understand that or are upset that their kids came home and said, well, we spent all this time today talking about compromise and how to compromise with one another. But if individual parents or parents aren't happy about the way it's being managed in the schools, there's a process for that. It's to go to the principal. If they don't get satisfaction, go to Brian Balke. If they don't get satisfaction, take it to the school board. It isn't something that the budget committee, in my opinion, can arbitrarily decide, well, we're not going to teach this anymore and we're done. I don't think that's our place. I think this should go through the process. So I guess I just have one final question. Jared, have any of these complaints come to the school board?
For this particular type, in this particular manner, to cut our staff, no. None of those complaints have come to our school board, to cut our staff.
Okay.
I would say that a lot of people advocate for increasing our teachers and increasing our staff, not cutting them.
I will also say, I mean, I see about 10,000 school kids a year in the state of New Hampshire. My organization has provided school programs for 100 years, so we've seen a lot of kids over a lot of years. They're still struggling after the pandemic. We still get kids who come to us with pretty severe behavioral issues that don't maybe require like a paraprofessional, but they're still having trouble with control. So, I mean, I think, and you can't learn if you're in a chaotic classroom with kids misbehaving. So I would hope that these parents, if they have concerns, that they talk to their schools, because that's the first place, that's the first recourse to get it done.
Frank?
I was going to ask Scott a question. You mentioned that you thought this program was unlikely to continue. Was that mainly because of the population size of the
Right,
of the
I think
classes?
I think it's based upon the population size, based upon post-pandemic. I think it's subject to review for future school boards, but right now, if you look at the enrollments, look at the population, it's warranted. Will it be warranted in 5 years from now? I can't say that with certainty. It depends upon the enrollments and how things are going at the time, but I stated that because I didn't want people losing track of why we instituted it in the first place. And that was very high enrollments, trying to give teachers a little bit of a break, the fact that kids post-pandemic, in terms of their behaviors and their coping skills were not very good, and this was a good program to initiate. I think everything that we do in the district, we reevaluate it. And I think you see that we move positions in between buildings depending upon the need. And I think that's always subject for discussion, going forward. So, as someone mentioned, it may become before the school board a year or two from now saying, hey, do we still need this? But we haven't heard that yet from anyone.
Okay. I would be more apt to fund another teacher position rather than, when we're looking at the class size, it sounds like the impetus for you saying it's one of the big reasons for the need is the size of the classes. And when we talk about teaching kindness and keep your hands to yourself, and teachers have been doing that since the dawn of time. This is nothing new. COVID increased things to a crazy level of people, being isolated, and people with wearing a mask, not being as, being able to express themselves verbally. My purpose of this motion is based on some of the feedback I've received from some parents who have said, it's not up to a teacher to teach my kid kindness. If my kid isn't being kind, my kid should be dealt with or disciplined. And I realize there are some children that have extra challenges with that. So in short, I would prefer to have another teacher if there was a choice. And that was the reasoning for this motion.
Yeah, and it's not our purview to determine what is being taught. It is only our purview to what we fund. And so we could make the motion to reduce the line, but at the end of the day, the school board can do what they will with it. So, just to clarify that.
Yeah, so that was my question. I think you clarified, but so say a teaching position is cut, whoever I'm looking at to answer this. It doesn't have to be that SEL person. The school could decide.
I'll answer that. You're absolutely correct. That's why I made that clarifying question, that this would be cutting from 25 teachers to 24. How we spend those 24 is up to the school board as a policy decision. This board has no authority or regulation over that.
Okay.
Samantha?
And so from what I've understood, where we would be going, in Maple Ave, it's a specific person. In other schools, this second step curriculum is still being taught, but it's just integrated into the regular school day. Okay.
They're both integrated into the regular school day.
Right.
It's just that you have an individual who is responsible for teaching that part of the curriculum, still integrated into the school day, but they will either co-teach it with the teacher, or the teacher's in the classroom, and that other teacher is presenting the second step materials.
Right, so at Mountain View, there is that person, there's not a person who's specifically that teacher.
That is correct.
Okay, so in essence, even if this motion were to pass, and, this is a big what if, right? If this motion were to pass, and the school board were to honor this by reducing this from 25 teachers to 24 teachers, this curriculum would still be taught at the end of the day. It would just be integrated into whatever the other teacher is doing.
It would be taught at the end of the day, but at the expense of the classroom teacher who now still has 24, 25, 26 children in the classroom. And I think that's the one point I want to keep harping on, is that we brought this on for two reasons, but the primary reason was overpopulation at Maple Avenue to give the classroom teachers who have very high enrollments in their classroom a bit of assistance in the classroom in a way that is cost conscious.
And I guess my overall point was that it seems like the motive of the motion is to get this curriculum out of the school and put it into the hands of the parents, but this motion would not accomplish that at all, because it would still get taught at the end of the day.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
My main concern about this is that this was a position that was created post-COVID through grant funding.
1 year of it.
1 year of
Yeah.
grant funding, and the position continued. And I'm concerned about the slow but steady growth of government through one-time grant funding that turns into positions over and over and over. And it might not even be necessarily what is being taught. It might be that the government is growing at a rate because the federal government gives us all this free money, but the money's not free. Like, at the end of the day,
Right.
we're going to have to recoup the costs. So I hear from people, parents, constituents, that like the slow, steady growth of government through grant funding is a real concern to them. So I don't even think necessarily it's like the content, because I haven't sat through a class like that before. Maybe I have, but it's the growth. I'm gonna let Laura go, then Olivia.
Thank you. What this comes down to, the main point, is we want to provide the best service for the town, for the community that we can, the least amount of money. What we keep hearing from all the teachers, from the school board, from parents, is, yeah, classes are crowded, there aren't a lot of teachers, it's hard to keep teachers, da, da, da. In the end, we're cutting a teacher. It doesn't matter if it was funded 1 year by a grant and now it's been funded by the town. We're cutting a teacher, which is the one thing that I think everyone can agree on that we need. So I'm not even sure what to argue about that. This is a teacher in a school that's overcrowded. It's a teacher. I don't know. I mean, we keep saying that that's the one thing that, oh, we need the teachers, we need the teachers. Every school said that. So why would we cut a teacher? I feel like that's so irresponsible for the kids. I feel like that's not providing the kids with what we're kind of pledging for the bang for the buck.
Yeah, and that's why I had a huge problem last meeting when we cut a teacher at Bartlett, and nobody voted with me to keep the teacher back. So I guess like we cut a teaching position at Bartlett, and we're trying to do the same here. And like,
That was a repurpose, though.
repurposed to an administrator, but I wanted to bring the teacher back into the class. That's my point, is like you can't say it like both ways, because I did literally make the motion to bring the teacher back in the classroom.
You can say it both ways, though, because that school decided that was their need. They desperately needed that second admin. If they desperately needed a teacher, I trust that they would have kept the teacher position. The schools know what they need. Maple Ave needs this 25th or whatever it is, teacher, regardless of what the actual position is. It's two different things.
Olivia?
So I get what you're saying about grant funding and the issues with that. However, I think what it comes down to is that positions are being created with grant funding because of a lack of state funding. So we can't create these positions or add teachers because we don't have the money. Trying to even things out, comparing Bartlett to Maple, they're two different schools with two
Bless you.
different sets of needs and priorities. Plus, the district does an amazing job of sharing teachers and sending people from one school to another to meet needs. So I don't really understand why we're saying, well, we cut one over at this school and gave an administrator. Well, we're also talking about that typically developing kids can't learn because everybody's out of control, but we need the administrator to help. None of it's adding up.
Peter?
I know that when I first ran for Budget Committee, I didn't pretend to have expertise in Budget Committee. I said, I remember Scott Gross, who I idolized at the time as a wonderful
Not anymore.
member of Budget, told me, why are you saying to people you're not going to be a great Budget Committee member year one? I said, because I have to learn. Frankly, I don't think this is an appropriate discussion for us to be having at this table. I don't think we're experts on all of this, right? We are here to try to help get bang for our buck, trying to save people money on their taxes and get a good product, and knowing that we have experts that we listen to. And I would really appreciate it if we stop pretending that we're experts on things that we're not at this table, because we're wasting taxpayers' time right now, frankly. And I'm very upset about this. I feel like I needed to go and regulate myself because of the fact that we were doing this right now. Please, can we move on?
Brian?
I think respectfully, Peter, I think it's in our purview because what I'm struggling with is, and I'm not an expert, but what I'm struggling with is that the teacher will do a lot of the SEL activities, and at Maple, there is also a registered behavioral specialist or technician. So there is capacity to help with the kids. So what I'm wrestling with is, why is there a dedicated position for SEL?
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
That's an appropriate discussion for this board. What Mr. Frank Hobbs brought up was not an appropriate discussion for this board, in my opinion. That is a question of, okay, do we have overlap here, right? If we have opinions of how curriculum should be taught, we should run for school board. That is not what we're doing here. But that, of course, is an appropriate question.
Frank?
Yeah, with all due respect, I'd like to take exception to that, because when our constituents say to us that they have a problem with how their tax money is being spent, that is our purview. And that's exactly what the motion was structured with, and that's why it was made.
Laura?
Thank you. A couple of things. Back to the experts. We have to put some trust in our school board, in our admin, in our teachers, in our schools, that they know what they need and what they're doing. So that is not our problem. Brian's right about the overlap. Do we need both? That's a discussion we can have. I do feel like that was a little answered because we have the line of the behavior specialist does deal more with like diagnoses, more extreme situations where this teacher we're talking about would be part of the more everyday and handle that so the teachers can teach the subjects that everyone keeps talking about they're so worried about. If an SEL teacher or any other teacher, any second person can handle a behavior so the rest of the class can continue learning, that is good for the community. That's good for our school kids. That's bang for the buck, because the kids that are good and ready to learn can. The kids that do need some assistance, be it extreme assistance or something lesser, they can be dealt with and learning can continue. It's about cutting a teacher. Do we do that or do we not? The school says they really need this.
Jared?
Just as a note, just because it's been brought up, we are not adding and have not added headcount to our budget for the past number of years. So when we say something was grant funded, it was something that we put in place and then we transitioned from an existing employee into that. So I'd like to just remind the public that we haven't increased headcount at all. We've changed a lot of jobs around based on our needs. And as Mr. Gross has said, we're going to continue to evaluate that because we don't want to add headcount and actually add bodies into the budget. But that means that we have to make sure that we're diligent in understanding where our needs are and we put those resources where they are. So I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that. Grant funding was just reducing or lowering our tax base because the person was there and they were just doing a different job.
Okay. I'm going to try to wrap this up
I'm
soon.
debating to bring something else that kind of dovetails into this conversation.
Go ahead. Well, there's a current motion on the floor.
Yeah, okay, let's focus on that.
All right, so
I wanna
are we ready to
conflate
vote on
things.
this motion? Okay. All those in favor of Frank's motion to reduce the number of teachers at Maple Ave from 25 to 24, specifically with the SEL position, please raise your hand now.
Hold on. We can't specify that
No.
we're cutting the SEL position.
Correct.
It's not something that we
Okay.
can do.
Right.
All those in favor of reducing the amount of teachers from 25 to 24, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Jared Talbot, Mark Reyno, Doug Pounds, Iz Carey, Laura Stevens, Samantha Kearns, Allison DeCesare, Richard Manzo, Peter Grigorkakis, Brian Mazer, Elizabeth Rule, Linfia Welch-Rodell, Kelly Boyer. All right, so motion fails. So we'll continue on.
Can I say a quick thing?
Yep.
I've really been pleased. This might sound silly because we seem to be like not all agreeing, which is fine. But I'm so pleased with the open discussions that we're having. Last year, it wasn't so much like this. And I think this is really important, and it's good for the community to see. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
And Joe, I know it takes more time, but like,
No, I'd rather-
I'm glad we're doing this.
I'd rather go at a pace that you're comfortable with, and there's some people that, yeah,
I think
great.
it's good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just want to make sure we have a chance to answer Mr. Master's question. So registered behavior technician would work underneath the BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. And what they tend to work with students with IEP, so it's a very small subset of even students who have IEPs. So the amount of students that they work with is very limited in nature, where any student would kind of need some understanding of how to kind of behave during an assembly, or when we talk about perseverance, that there's just more students who would need that SEL help. That's, again, geared towards school SEL help, not geared towards other things, but geared towards the situations in schools that they encounter. So it would encompass more students with that. Because you had asked about the registered behavior technician. So that position would work with very few
Students. It's more individualized, Brian. They're almost paraprofessionals who deal with either a one-on-one or a very small group, and they have specialized training in behaviors under the guidance of someone who is a BCBA. And we're seeing the need for these folks, because our paraprofessionals, don't get me wrong, they're wonderful folks, but you have kids who have challenges with behaviors, whether that's neurological or other reasons for that, and they need folks who have specialized training to assist them. And we're seeing, here's the thing that always gets lost in all this. We are seeing success with it. So our behavioral person and having these RBTs, it is working. So in this case, I always want people in the community, school board, budget committee, people to be open-minded that we have to try different things, and it is starting to work. And if anything, I think just please be open-minded to that, and that what we're trying to accomplish is sometimes resources do have to get moved around, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, we will always evaluate and reevaluate again staffing at our buildings and put the positions where the greatest needs are, while, as Jared said, keeping the head count neutral as best as we can.
Scott, can you talk to me a little bit about what specific metrics you use to evaluate whether this is working or not?
It's the number of, you have discipline referrals that go to your deans of students. You have to keep track of incidents of violence, safe schools reports, all of those things. But most importantly, it's internal to how many kids are getting referred to the principal, the dean of students, for disciplinary reasons. Because if they are controlling their emotions in the classroom or in the hallways, that is then less behavior issues that are going on. And keeping in mind that when there is a student who, we call it, who could be in crises, right, where they are having a legitimate incident, it could take 4 or 5 staff to deal with that particular issue. So if you can work to de-escalate that situation with people with the right training, that means it's only 2 people maybe dealing with it, or 1 person dealing with it. So rather than everybody trying to deal with a student who is having a challenge that particular day, because of the efforts and the specialized training, they're de-escalating that way in advance to helping that student cope and try different things to better control themselves. So in that instance, we are seeing less in terms of those discipline referrals and disruptions in the classroom.
Okay. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. The other thing I want to bring up too, and I think you mentioned it, Scott, is the Dean of Students. So I remember, I forget the gentleman who presented about his particular role as a Dean of Students, and what I got from it, what I gleaned from it, it was very behaviorally focused, which I can respect. Well, I also am wrestling with it again because, me going to school 30 years ago, and even presently, maybe there's more behavioral issues with kids. I still think, and I think a lot of people do in regards to that are supporting me, is that, well, that's where you have a principal and a vice principal to help with behavioral issues. Like, Dean of Students was not even part of the equation when I was in school. I had a principal, and that was it. So if I got in trouble, I saw the principal. So to me, I'm wrestling with that. Why is there a dedicated function at this school for dean of students with basically behavioral issues? But then you have SEL, then you have RBT, so why are there so many layers? And so I'm wrestling with that because to me, I don't see the justification for the dean of students, to be honest with you. I just don't, because again, principal and vice principal, they're there for leadership and high-level behavioral intervention.
So who deals with the low-level behavioral intervention?
RBT.
The RBT is, we need to explain this again.
Or even SEL, I mean, like.
The RBT is dealing with a student who has an individualized education plan, and that particular student has reasons why they're having problems regulating their behaviors. It could be a whole spectrum of reasons why, but that RBT is dealing with either one student or a couple of students. So the notion of you have to deal with those one or two students, that you're going to be dealing with the other 535 that are at Maple Avenue, that does not occur. So that's where your dean of students comes in, where a teacher is reporting that a student in their classroom who does not have an RBT is having a challenge, or there's a fight or an argument. It would be the dean of students who would then talk to those students. We have issues on buses where kids are doing things on buses. Well, that dean of students has to go on the bus. Sometimes they have to ride the bus because there's concerns. Depending upon the grade level, we're talking Maple Avenue, and thank goodness we don't have these issues, but we're dealing with a whole thing, a whole scope of issues now that maybe we didn't have 30, 40 years ago. Cyberbullying, online bullying, we're dealing with vaping, we're dealing with you name it, drugs, all those things. And the deans of students across our schools, and obviously middle and high school for the latter things that I had just mentioned, but the behavioral issues are just as poignant at the grade levels, at the lower grade levels, than they are at the high school. No doubt about that. So we can talk about, parents should play more of an important role, and we probably would all agree to that. But the reality of it is that we're dealing with what we have. And we can't educate our students to the level that we want to if there are constant behavioral issues. The dean of students deals with that. Also, in a school that is, 550 folks, we did explain why we put in that dean of students for those very reasons, that there was just a very, very high population of students there. Keeping also in mind that the assistant principal in almost all of our elementary schools deals with special education exclusively. So it's just the principal who would be dealing with all of the other matters that you're talking about.
Good, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a follow-up, respectfully, I think you're right. I think cyberbullying and all those didn't exist when I went to school. Drugs definitely still existed. That was definitely there. But to me, and I'm not condoning that by no means, I guess the thing I'm still wrestling with is that the school I went to was quite small, it's 400. You got one principal fielding all behavioral issues. And I know we're at a different time, and I can respect that, but I'm still wrestling with it. And I'm wrestling with justification, because if someone can show to me quantifiably, if this position is cut, it's going to affect the kids. And I don't think anyone here can actually provide that type of data. I just don't think so. I mean, I'm willing to change my mind, but to me, I'm in the opinion that it's another layer that doesn't really necessarily to be there from that perspective. But then on the other perspective, which I'm really wrestling with, is my constituents come to me and say, you know what, I'm still hurting. And come March, if I see a new default that's even higher, $1 higher, I may or may not vote for it. So I'm wrestling with that. So how do we have hard conversations to align and stabilize the spend? Because if we don't, taxes keep on going up. So to me, I'm really wrestling with that. So how do we make hard decisions? Again, before, I mentioned earlier, how do we cut our taxes, and it's really payroll or services? That's the only way we can significantly do it. So I'm really having these conversations. I'm wrestling with that particular position because I see so many different layers of behavioral intervention, and I appreciate the defined roles. I'm not an expert, but I'm still wrestling with it, and then also trying to serve my constituents to hopefully spend less, so therefore their taxes are stabilized, if not go down.
And I think if I could,
Yeah.
the notion, though, that Goffstown has the lowest cost per pupil in the state of New Hampshire, that has an elementary, middle, and high school component demonstrates the fact that the school board has, for many, many years, made those tough decisions to keep those costs low because of everything that you just stated. So I agree with everything that you said. We have an obligation, the school board does, the community does, to keep our costs. But if we were number 50, number 80, number 120, like, maybe, but when we are the lowest in the entire state, no, it's not the fourth lowest, because.
We're number one now?
We are number one when you add them all together, elementary, middle, and high. Add them all together, we are the lowest. And when you look at New Boston, also, they only have an elementary school, so they're the fourth lowest. So when you look at that, you're like, okay, the SAU 19 is managing these schools. And you know another one? Dunbarton, which it used to be an SAU 19. So these communities are making those very, very tough decisions. Now, I would argue, because we get the requests for more, teachers, more programs, et cetera, and at the superintendent level, he's not here tonight, he's doing negotiations in New Boston, but he has made those tough decisions to say, no, we had a default budget, we are not doing that. And I know there are many on the school board who didn't like that directive from the superintendent. So, well, I
loved it. I don't.
Right. Well, some did, some didn't, and I've heard from many of you that maybe they didn't agree with that. But I must sincerely state that, the directive that I got from the superintendent was to make sure that it was the lowest possible budget that we can do to maintain our programs, and to redistribute positions around where they see fit, and that was what was stated to the school board as well. So, and I think our job and the healthy conversation that we're having tonight is to explain why. And if that explanation doesn't satisfy budget committee members, then you obviously make your decisions. But we certainly should have that discussion as to why those positions or why those programs benefit the students.
Okay, thank you. Are you all set?
Stick to the budget.
Yeah, no, we're going, I'm fine. I'll let
Continue
their deck.
this. Yeah.
Personally, I think this is, he's raised some really important points, and I think we should continue it, even though it
Yeah.
pulls us off the school budget.
Yeah. Laura, then I'll go around.
Thank you. Also, I think it's our job as budget committee to be realistic. So if the people we're talking to want us to lower taxes a ton, maybe we can't lower them a ton. Maybe we just can't. We can only do so much. The state's involved, the government's involved. Maybe the goal that we need to explain to people, look, now that we have this information as budget committee members, we're gonna try and not have taxes go up a ton. Maybe that's more realistic than we're gonna lower your taxes a ton. We just have to look at the numbers and be real. And I think, Peter, you might have said it in the first meeting, it's a hard conversation either way. We have to tell the people that trust us to make the decisions, look, we are doing our best, and the fact of it is, things are gonna go up a little, or they're gonna stay the same. They're not gonna go down. That may be a conversation, because none of us here want things to go up either. But that may be the unfortunate truth of the conversation we have with people, is we're gonna try and keep things as stable as possible, but you're not gonna see a huge decrease because that's not realistic.
Allison?
I just wanted to speak towards, Brian, kind of your struggle of understanding what all these different groups do or people do. And I said this during the school presentation, is go to the school. Because I will tell you, standing in that office at about 2 o'clock, 2:30, you can see what everyone, I have literally never walked by that the dean of students didn't have a kid in their office and a kid waiting outside to talk to him. But it really gives you an idea, you say, what does the principal do? Go see them. You're more than welcome. They've said that before. They said, come see what we do. You want to go check out what the RBT is working on? I assume, I don't know, because that's special ed, if that's a different thing. But watching these people in action, you really get an idea of what they have to deal with right now. Because even those of us with kids in this school, it's hard sometimes to fully get what's going on there until you stand there and watch it. Till I sit in my IEP meeting and I hear what's going on, until you see the kids struggling on social media. I mean, that's something none of us ever had to deal with. It puts a new level of stress on our kids that we never dreamed of. And my kids don't have phones for that reason. but that's not what everyone's getting at home. So you talk about this, helping kids to maneuver through the world. Any kid who's handing their 11-year-old a phone and going, go to it, isn't handling that at home. And then the teachers are paying the price for that. There is so much bullying going on, it's absurd. So I would just encourage you to go check it out, because it's eye-opening to see what they're doing. That's what I would say. It's hard to make a decision. It's kind of like, Elizabeth was saying, people, even in the public, come to Frank and say, cut the SEL program. They don't even really know what's happening in the SEL program, I would almost guarantee. None of them have ever looked at the material that Scott's talking about. None of them have, and I can't say none, I would doubt most of them have had deep conversations with the teacher about what's being taught in SEL. But the same thing, go to the source, go check it out. Because I think you'll have a better perspective. And you may still agree you think it should be cut after, but you'll at least have more information. That would be my suggestion.
All set. Anybody? Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that, but I do think Brian has raised some really important points. And when you look at I'm looking in our binders, there's a history of the tax effort in section 7. I mean, there's been a big jump in the last couple of years. Now, it's not a coincidence that there's also been a big jump in inflation. And I guess I wonder, when people complain about their taxes, do they expect taxes not to rise at the same level of inflation? Because I think that's a tough one. I mean, because then you're telling people to do more with, or do the same with less money. And I'm not sure that's a reasonable expectation. I think it is really important that people understand that there isn't a lot of bloat and waste in these budgets, and that we're to the point where we're really making decisions about, do you want to pay for this service? Is it worth it to you? And if not, then we'll cut it. But you got to make that call. I think it's unrealistic if people think their taxes are going to go down and everything's going to be the same. But I also think, we've been banging our heads against expenses for decades. But the formula is expenses minus revenues equal taxation. We have to get serious about revenue, because I don't want to pull us too far off the school budget, but that is where the problem is that our revenues are just crashing across the board. And I think that's why you're seeing, it's all getting pushed onto the local level, and it's turning all of us against one another, these outside forces, and it's polluting everything. And I think we really need to spend some time. I mean, the 3 areas I see are impact fees, the state funding, and the county. I think the county is just, the more I look at the county, it's just a huge albatross around our neck. We're paying $2.4 million a year for a county assessment. We're being assessed at the same rate as every other town in this county, and yet we're the town that houses all those offices, that has lost 700 acres, has been taken out of generating tax revenue for 175 years. Think of how much money that is. I mean, they're going to argue, the county's going to argue that it's jobs. Baloney. There's a handful of jobs, and unless they can prove that there's preferential hiring for people of Goffstown, and that it's actually offsetting the $2.4 million we're paying every year, I'm not buying that argument.
And Elizabeth, because I serve on the county delegation too, this is something that I'm specifically looking in this year. I already talked with Derek and Danielle about the nursing home and
Which
the
is
amount
gobbling up
of
services?
amount of services that is taxed from our local fire departments. This is something that we can't really necessarily quantify it relative to Medicaid billing and all that stuff, but trying at least to get some sort of stipend or something from the county to help cover some of those expenses. I understand what you're saying.
And I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and I know you're earnest about it. I know Kelly mentioned that the select board is earnest about this too, but there's a lot of towns in this county, the most populous county in all of northern New England. We've been subsidizing them for decades. They're not just out of the goodness of their hearts gonna say, oh, okay. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars. I'm not a litigious person. I think we should be looking at suing them, at least for the assessment the assessment should be waived. We should not be having to pay every year these amounts of money to fund everybody else in the county. I mean, that's my opinion. That's why, I think we really need to be looking seriously at revenues. I think we have just been way too hands-off on it, and it's a big part of the equation.
Okay. Olivia, Kelly had something too, so Olivia and then Kelly.
I think it's good that we're talking about how to talk to people. None of us talk to all of the same people, and I think it's important that we have honest discussions and we point the people we're talking to towards the right track. So if, say, the SEL that Frank brought up, if he's talking to people that are saying, I'm not comfortable with this being part of the school, then he could say something, I can't remove SEL from the curriculum as a budget committee member, but who you could talk to is the school board or Brian Bulkey or whoever it is in that situation. And then as far as new positions since we were growing up and stuff, I don't remember deans as students either, and I went to school here. But I think what Peter was saying as well is that we have to trust in the people that are leading these departments and that are moving us forward. And I think what it comes down to is the world kept changing and it wasn't working anymore the way it was when we were growing up, and they saw needs that needed to be filled. And like Scott was saying, they're reviewing things. So maybe before Maple Lab didn't need a dean, maybe Mountain View didn't, but now they do. And we keep talking about the bubbles and they're moving up. So I just think it's really important that we keep those open and accurate conversations with people throughout Goffstown.
Kelly? Good. All right. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think everyone's making good comments, good discussion. I was going to make a motion. I don't think there's an appetite for the support of it to strike the Dean of Students at Maple. But I guess my last comment to this is that, and I respect the school and Brian Balke and team putting together a leaner budget. If the proposed goes through, it's 3%. I think my constituents are concerned in the past years. I don't have the exact percentage, but it's definitely was a lot higher than 3%. It was like 7 or 10% collectively. So to me, they're anticipating that another bump, and they're already hurting. So this is where it's all coming from, is that they're on a fixed budget, and you can't budget for a 7 to 10% swing. You just can't. So to me, 3%, you can argue that because it's tied to inflation, but to me, it's like, that's why we're having these hard conversations, like how can we stabilize it, to use a word, or to make sure it's to a measurable, quantifiable number so they can budget to it as years go by. Because I'm not just looking at this year or next year, I'm looking 10 years down the road. And that's where I'm wrestling with, because if they see another big swing come this year, again, they shouldn't be forced to sell because they can't afford the taxes. So to me, I really go out of my way, and I have a really keen interest in helping them so they don't have this larger hardship, but yet want to be in the community. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Go ahead.
Really quickly, thank you, Brian, by the way. Just to say that the other part of Laura, what you were saying that I had said the other day, it was people have to have hard conversations on one end to say, right, hey, this is why we can't get your taxes down. But also, I think kind of in support of what you're saying, that's why we also are having those conversations saying, this is why we understand it would be really nice if we could have that in Goffstown because we're seeing how successful it is in this town and that town. This is why, if you want to be able to live here and have semi-affordable taxes, this is why we can't have that too. So I commend that in terms of that type of a discussion. Like, we're going to be talking about hard cuts sometimes, or just not even hard cuts, but like, don't even bring it to the table. Sometimes it's just like, you're not bringing these things to our table because we can't afford it.
Allison?
But I think part of the conversation, kind of like Elizabeth said, is where are we going back to constituents and this old lady who can't afford it and talking about how we increase revenues, how the state hasn't been funding us like they even have in the past. So where is that conversation happening? Because it has to happen too. It can't just be about she can't afford her taxes. It also has to be like, go talk to this person or Joe who's in the state And we need to be getting the revenue that we were, and we're not. And that fight seems to be given up by most people. All they care about is what they have to pay in taxes. But if the state were giving us more, we could actually lower their taxes and/or improve our schools. Every single year, we're like scraping the barrel just to, and our town, to just get by, to just keep it good enough. We talked about, our position at, I think 11th right now. That's not going to continue if we're not going to treat our teachers with the respect that they deserve and give them rates that they can get in these other towns. They are all going to leave. Would you stay? If you could literally go work for a school next door for 10 minutes down the road and make 20 grand more, would you stay? Most people would not. I don't know that I would. You got to love Goffstown to do that for a long period of time. They all have families too. And while I get the people that are struggling, where's the state helping? Where's the state helping to lower that woman's tax rate? And they used to. It's not like this is a new thing and we're just asking for money. Why are they not giving us the money that they used to? Come on, Scott, answer me.
I
Why?
do, I have an answer, and you're not going to let, no, I'm going to say it. The interesting component here, and last year, the legislature voted for Goffstown and other school districts to get another $1.1 million of state education adequacy type aid. Our local reps voted for that. It did not pass the Senate, and that failed. Okay, $1.1 million. If you take a look at what the budget increase is, we also got shortchanged $255,000 on special ed aid. You add that all together, and this goes to your point, it's like, that would have absorbed, there would have almost been like no tax increase, because the money, those extra aid, fulfilling the obligation, that would have satisfied all of that. So the issue that we have historically is that even if budget growth over the last 20 years has averaged, I think it's 3.3%, but if the state is only going up 1% in aid, and the local taxes, and the need is 3.3, the 2.3 difference is compounding over that 20-year period, which means that it's become more and more unaffordable. So I too look at the projected numbers and 5 and 10 years out, and it makes me nervous, very, very nervous, because I too have to live in this community. I want to live in this community. Can I afford to live in this community? And this is why this debate is happening here now, and it's happening in every single town and city in New Hampshire. It's not going away. And unfortunately, state education funding is the giant gorilla in the room, because it sucks up a lot of the tax base of most communities. 75% in many cases of the tax bill is schools. And without a revenue source, other than the local property tax or other than state help, and Joe, you mentioned it, the solutions aren't pretty either, income or sales. But right now, it's all property for the most part. So is what it is, but it's not, I don't want to like belabor it too much, but in 1 year, I saw what that number was. We talked about it. It got defeated. Then we just got the news about the special ed aid, and boom, $1.3 million total or more. So that's a lot of money. That's 50 cents in the tax rate.
That's my point, is we're not talking about that part. When you're talking to constituents who are complaining about their tax dollars, we're not talking about that part. Like, how do we as people start getting our voice up to New Hampshire? More than it is. Or up to the state, sorry.
Doug?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo Elizabeth's concern about revenue. I think it's outside of this board's purview, but one thing I have not heard talk about is how do we foster bringing in business within the town? Because I think if we bring in businesses, that's not going to put extra burden, because businesses don't bring children along with them unless people move here and reside here. So I'd just like to encourage, and again, I know this board doesn't do that, but if the town could foster bringing more business in here, I think that would certainly help alleviate some of the stress.
I will pass along your support to the EDC. They'll be happy to hear.
All right, Elizabeth.
I know, I'm sorry, I know
No,
you want to
it's
get
all-
off this, but I'm sorry, I really do think it's super important. I did run some numbers. I asked Scott, remember when we had our joint meeting with the school board and Scott was so rude to me about,
Which time?
I know, which time?
His ears perked up.
I asked about this state adequacy aid. They gave a figure of what it was in 2004 and then a figure of what it was in 2024. And I said, what should it have been if it had just continued at that rate? And he didn't really answer me. So I did it myself. I figured it out myself. And it comes out, if I've done this correctly, and I excluded Glen Lake because I didn't know if they got the same adequacy aid as other students since they're half-day.
Half.
So I kept them out of the equation. But this year, if my numbers are right, we would be receiving $4 million more just in this year if the state had kept with that original formula that we were using in 2004, which, by the way, the courts had already deemed insufficient. And they just did it again, 2 years ago, last year? The Rand decision is still ongoing. It's still being appealed. But that's multiple millions of dollars more if that court figure was accepted and funded at. So, and I believe now there's another case to end all state funding for education.
The Supreme Court has it now. The state Supreme Court has it. I hear you on education funding. I think part of the issue is that there's 400 people, and then you have to get 201 people to agree on an exact formula, and then there's another 24 people. And I think that I hear you. Like I understand. Like, this is an issue on the state level, the funding, but the only thing I feel like my power is my one vote, and when I get opportunities to vote to bring more money to Goffstown, I do, and I try to communicate it, and I think Scott said that, but it's something where it's this like wicked problem. If we want an income or sales tax, let me know. Like if I get enough people that said we want an income tax, maybe that's something we explore, but, I'm sorry?
I would support that. I
wait.
don't know why we're like one of the few states that doesn't have an income tax, and why everybody is so hung up on it.
Okay.
But there's a little bit of disingenuousness here in that, last year at deliberative, there were comments made about we're just swapping one tax for another. That is not true.
Right.
Because a big part of education funding comes from the income and dividend tax, which is a tax that most of us sitting around this table have never paid and probably never would pay. Well, we definitely will now because it's being phased out after this year. But it was a tax that was on the wealthiest of us that supported education. It got removed. It got lowered, and now it's been removed. And all that spending that was associated with it got pushed on to middle and lower income people through their property taxes. So, I'm not trying to blame you, Joe. I'm not saying it's all your fault because you are only one of 400. But the truth is, until towns all over this state start saying to their representatives, you have to prioritize this. We don't care what your party says or your ideology is. This is important to us. And education is always the first or second most important issue to voters. Poll after poll after poll shows that. So, this isn't about school choice. If it were me, we'd fund it all so that every kid got the education they needed. But the state has to take some responsibility for this.
Brian.
I'm trying to formulate my thoughts. I guess to continue this conversation, and I'm not sure, Joe or Chair, if you can comment to this in your present position as a state rep elect, is my understanding is that Goffstown is unique because our enrollment has increased or stabilized. Most communities have gone down statewide. So
That is accurate
if I can model that, that's why there's less funding from the state, because collectively, there's less students in the system or in districts. It's not a good argument, but I think that's understanding the reasoning behind it. But going back to Allison's point, I do think, and there is measures being taken at the planning board side, which I'm a part of, about increasing our impact fees. So that should help. What I'm not really willing to go into is my philosophical position or ideologies about business, to Doug's point, because I do think, I'll mention it, but I won't go into great depths. I just think that we need to bring in more business and the right type of businesses that employ more people, and it actually is offsetting our property taxes, so it's not just a burden on, personal households, right? So, and again, I'll reserve comments, but there's been things that have been happening the past couple of years that I don't like the change of land use from commercial to residential. I'll just say that very frankly. And that affects, because we only have one corridor of commercial, and if that gets all gobbled up to be residences, which I know we need housing, then we're in a very poor planning position in the future. Very, very poor. So I'm wrestling with that as well, so.
I learned a piece of advice years ago, and it was, it's okay to say, like, you don't know something. Like, I'm not an expert in education funding by any means, and so I'm not gonna try to say that I know the answer to education funding, because I don't. I could just say my one vote's my one vote, and try to do the best what you got.
One last
Go ahead,
thing.
Laura.
Thank you. I think, I forget who said it, maybe Elizabeth, you said it, or you alluded to it. I think maybe the takeaway here, because we've all said, like, even you, for the state, you're just the one vote, right? But I think what we can do is have the conversation about the state with people, because when we were at our, town meeting, and people said, like, it's not the state, it's not about the state, that's incorrect. To what your ideology is, what you think it should be, that's a personal thing. But when the numbers are, the state is giving less, things are only going up, like, it is partially the state. We're not pointing fingers, we're just telling the facts of it. And I think it's important the community understand that as well, so their actions can reflect that understanding. Because we're just agreeing with this many, so if we understand it, that's one thing, but the more people that understand, the more they can affect that change as well.
Okay. Kelly?
Let's say one more thing and then hopefully we can go
Yes.
back to
We're on
lines.
one page, it's been an hour and 15, so.
I just want to make a general
Move at committee's pace, but.
comment. We're talking a lot about ideology, but
Elizabeth's face.
I guess it's some political ideology of my own as well. I keep hearing people say, like, my constituents in conversations that they're having, and I just generally, for everyone, just want to say, everyone in this community is all of our constituents. And I really hope that people are doing their best to talk to people of all different walks of life. And if you're hearing a common theme with a certain group of people or those surrounding you, that you're putting effort into hearing the other opinions and seeing if that's a collective or isolated or whatever. Because I certainly hope and would think that nobody at this table is making, budgetary impacts on things from a handful of people. If you are, that's your choice, but I just want to encourage everyone to try and hear all different kinds of opinions. And if you need advice for where to make some community connections, I'm happy to help.
Okay.
Just real quick.
All right.
I'm just gonna take Allison's recommendation. I'm gonna try to shadow Adita's students. And the reason being is because I need to learn more, absorb that. And it may come back to emotion in the future, depending on what I experience and what I see. I just want to put it on the record.
Okay. And it's our budget, so
Yeah.
do with that with what you wish. All right, so we are on page 26. It's been one page, so I love the discussion.
We're on 28.
So take a quick look at 26, then we'll move on to 27.
I was quick to just about to second that.
What?
Scott not making. a
Oh, I was
motion.
commenting about going to the trestle, but it's okay.
You can go to the trestle.
We can second
Done.
that.
We have a meeting.
Imagine, that'd change things.
We should have meetings at the trestle.
That's
You
what-
video.
I was just gonna say,
I
can
don't
we
think
just
VTV
all
would
go
set
to the
up.
trestle?
I don't think it's fair to make them set up.
Would it save taxpayer money? They wouldn't have to.
end of it.
It's increasing.
We're investing in
Kelly. All right, let's circle back. Kelly.
Sorry, guys. Line 677, the general supply. Scott, can you just give me a quick, run through of the things that are in that line?
Yeah, so this one is just what all classroom teachers would need throughout the year. So this program 18 is general education, and you'll note that throughout the budget, you might see supplies for special ed, supplies for the phys ed teacher. This would be the 24/25 classroom teachers, what they need, and that ranges from paper to, you know,
Disinfectant wipes. things like
whatever,
that.
an elementary,
Markers,
markers,
scissors.
yeah, all those things, crayons, you name it.
Do we still
Elizabeth.
ask parents, like, do we
Yes,
send
they
home
still-
supply
they
lists
still do
every
that,
summer and ask
yes.
parents to
Yep,
send supplies in?
yep,
Yeah,
And do we have some sort of mechanism for students who
yes,
parents
always,
cannot
yeah.
always.
do that?
Yep.
I used to donate my
He
stipend
does,
to
yeah.
the Glen Lake, but
Not next
looks
year.
like I won't be next year,
What a
so.
bummer.
Oh, my God.
Should have been here.
You can still donate.
I had representation, okay?
All right, page 27. Moving forward. Peter.
So I'm actually looking at this page and 28, just because they're tied together. For special ed, paraprofessionals and teacher salaries, would my health insurance that I'm looking at on the next page, on 708, is that directly linked to both of those combined? Paraprofessionals and?
Yes, because we don't separate them out.
Oh, got it, okay. So that's why these are climbing even though the
Yes.
teachers
Yeah.
are, okay, thank you.
All right, 28. Elizabeth?
So, line 737. So now that this issue has come up, this is the guidance counselor.
Yep.
Can you just explain, because, I mean, I went probably to school earlier than Brian did, but I don't remember having all these positions at school either. Can you just explain what the difference, like, what is a guidance counselor? When I went to high school, a guidance counselor helped you get into college or join the military.
Not anymore.
And I can't imagine
That's
fourth
true.
graders are doing that.
And that's a good question. And even if you asked the guidance department here, they would argue that they probably spent the majority of their time on career readiness, college application, you know, that type of thing. And now it's shifted around to mental health. So the mental health challenges that we have transcend all grade levels. And there is an argument to be made that our elementary school kids have just as much in terms of mental health needs as our middle and high school kids. And we're seeing significant challenges at our early grades with, you know, behavior issues, et cetera. So you have, these guidance counselors deal with a whole slew of things. We have a certain population of kids who might have, their parents just went through a divorce, might be single parents. You have to deal with a whole array of things that are emotionally draining on a young student, and the guidance counselor helps them navigate it. So not only would it be a potential behavior thing, but it's really all about, it's about grief, you name it, that guidance counselor, you know, gets involved.
So do we also have a school psychologist, or are those
We
jobs?
do, but
more-
not in every school, and they spend some time based upon a referral from guidance or the principal or special ed, where they would get time with a school psychologist, but we don't have one in every building. That's a shared, it's shared. It's like it's a referral that you need.
So
We
the
don't-
guidance counselor's like the first line of
First,
treatment?
they're one of many layers, but yes.
Okay, and then it would get bumped up to a school psychologist?
Not always. So school psychologists don't do a lot of the IEP testing.
Testing,
As well
yeah.
for referral. So they're more doing the testing that's needed to see if a student, to help the team, the IEP team, make a decision on whether that student needs specialized education, as well as whether they need to kind of continue with specialized education every 3 years. So most of their time is devoted to kind of the testing, and they sometimes do some work with students who have IEPs. And different schools do different things with their psychologists, but most of the time it's going to the testing, the IEP students.
So I thought Scott said that the assistant principals were spending, or did I hear that wrong? The assistant principals are spending most of their time dealing with IEP students, with special ed?
In our elementary
meeting.
schools and in meetings, yes. They spend a considerable amount of time with our special ed population.
So your
and the parents.
assistant principals they're going to be your LEAs of the meeting, so which means that they have the control over, in a way, that the purse strings at the
The
end.
decision-making.
The decision-making. It's the whole team, but they know what a school can offer and can't offer at that school as well. So they sit in on probably a lot of the meetings, and there's the amount of special ed meetings, there's just, it's a decent amount of them.
Okay, I
So-
have one more question for this. What is the district's policy on cell phone use for students?
There is no district policy per se, but there are individual schools deal with it. And I can tell you at the middle school, that students are not allowed to have a cell phone on them. They have to keep it in their backpacks in, I think it's grade 5, 6, and 7. I think 8th graders are allowed to have it at lunchtime, but other than that, they're not. So at the high school, they are allowed to use cell phones. It's all teacher discretion, so most people have smartphones now, so if you're working on a test or something, cell phone use would be prohibited, but I do not believe that it is something that is, not permitted. And we are seeing greater cell phone, not usage, but just having them.
Prevalence.
Prevalence, yes, is the best word, at elementary grade levels, where parents want to be able to communicate with their student. And right now, the board does not have a universal policy with respect to that. There are school districts that are doing those types of things.
I will just tell you that I have heard anecdotally from probably 24 teachers, 4th grade teachers, that 4th grade Christmas is when kids tend to get their first phone or device, and that they see a huge drop in their ability to manage their own behavior after that. So, just saying, maybe the school board needs to think about a policy along those lines.
It's the budget committee, Elizabeth, right?
I know, that's why I didn't say we should make it, I suggested that they consider it.
Right, Jared?
Well, that's why Jared will
Yes,
take this
Jared's
back to the
here.
school board.
I'm sure
Yeah.
Jared is taking notes.
Jack is here too. Jack's
Jack is
Jack's
taking all
furiously
the
taking notes over there. All right, Brian.
I don't see a pen in either of them.
Yeah.
It's all here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess now my struggle is probably thickened now. I wouldn't say plot, just my personal struggle. And it may be another avenue to shadow a guidance counselor, because I remember when I was going to school, I didn't interface with a guidance counselor until my junior year and senior year. So saying that their behavioral intervention at some level, I don't know what percentage of their day is in that. So again, my struggle thickens because of that. So I might have to shadow a guidance counselor too to get her view or view into their life and what they do. So I just want to mention that because I am wrestling with all this layers.
We got to chat. We're going to go
Yeah.
out for lunch.
Sure.
At a place in Bedford, and we're going to see a lot of families with little kids on devices, and their parents don't talk to them. And
That
that'll.
is so sad. That
But
is,
it's
like, so
true.
true.
And it's the truth. So when you're out and about, watch unfortunately, how many of these situations occur, and then we wonder why we have to do it in the public school arena. Is because it may not be taking place in the other arenas.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Samantha. Do you have anything?
I just wanted to like speak to like the guidance counselors. Like in my youth, like the guidance counselor is who you went to when you were being bullied, and like it seems to me like the principal and like the dean of students and even this SEL teacher are who, like, their purview is to deal with the bully, and the guidance counselor is to help the bullied. Like, that person who is being, like, who's suffering from that, like, mental health crisis as a young child and, like, isn't able to, like, figure it out, you know? And I mean, you guys can totally correct me if I'm wrong on, like, those people's roles, but I mean, like, I always had guidance counselors from elementary school onwards, and, you know, I mean, and that, it was a while ago, but it wasn't, like, you know, terribly long ago. I don't think that it's that strange to have these two different roles, because, you know, they both seem very necessary.
I'm gonna try to
That's fine.
get us
Back
moving a
in.
little faster.
It's all right.
I just have a quick question. Is it permissible to shadow guidance counselors and
I'm
behavior
gonna have to talk to the
therapists?
superintendent about that tomorrow.
Yeah, I was
honestly.
just-
I think it
it's a
probably
Yeah,
would
you
not
probably can't
be.
sit in on meetings and stuff,
Right.
but at least like meet with them or whatever.
Yeah, I think you can talk with one,
I just meant
but
like showering them for an afternoon.
not
I
with a
don't think
student
that would be
there.
a-
No, no.
All right, we're on page 28, a lot of special ed on that page. I'm gonna move to page 29.
I think we're on 30. No.
Now we're on 30. That sounds good.
We're on 29?
30.
Oh, 30.
I do actually have a question on 30.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So there's this line, hold on, I'm getting there, 775. So health, general supplies for health at Maple, 2490. I'm curious what that is, but also I'm curious because this line jumped out at me at Bartlett's too, and I didn't bring it up at the time. But as I remember from Bartlett, that same line is like 3,500. So it's more money for substantially less kids at Bartlett.
Is this for testing?
No, this is
30?
general health supplies. This is like,
Sorry, it's line 775, Health Maple General Supplies.
yeah, I mean, this would be medication, Band-Aids, you name it, like, things are
It
a
seems like
nurse,
an awful lot of Band-Aids.
things that are nurse, well, EpiPens aren't
Oh.
cheap.
Nice
Those are
bags.
very expensive, so
So we
depending upon
supply
how many
those, don't-
kids.
I mean,
No,
if-
don't you get free EpiPens?
Not always, no.
I think this,
No, the state doesn't give us any.
I think the state.
They get used
hold on.
furniture,
I think the state supplies the
Yeah.
EpiPens.
But doesn't there, I mean, but you don't get an EpiPen, I mean, it's not like you just pick up an EpiPen, you have to have a prescription for an EpiPen.
Correct.
Right? So
Yeah.
doesn't the student
They
bring
do, but
that?
if they don't have it with them, you have to have them at the school.
Yeah, if they forget
If
it
they forget
at
it,
home,
yeah.
Gotta have
Where someone has
Gotta have it there.
psychology, but doesn't-
It's 511 on the other page, if you were wondering.
Okay, 511, thank
Yeah.
you, Sam.
And it's
So-
3,500.
But shouldn't the parents ultimately be responsible for that? I mean, EpiPens are expensive.
For the most part, parents are responsible.
They are, but
So
if-
it's,
kids
a
can't
lot
go
of
to
it,
shop.
those bandages, the ice packs, the gloves, the masks for the nurse from time to time. So it's, elementary school, nursing session, it's like a cycle. Kids kind of coming and going.
I mean,
Okay.
Elizabeth, you, based on actuals at Bartlett, it's 3,500, you could almost cut that to 2,500 because it's 200 kids compared to 600, it's the same.
Well, that's what I
it's
mean,
more.
it seems odd to me that
It's-
that it's so much
yeah.
higher at Bartlett and there's half the kid, or less than
Not
half the
even half, yeah.
kids.
You don't know, again, I don't know how many medically involved students are at these schools. So you gotta
Okay.
keep in mind too, that you might have double the amount of kids, but if I have 10 medically involved students who require, significant nursing type services, and Maple has only 5, I could find that out, but it would not surprise me, because I do know that we do have some students that where you have to, there's feeding, there's stuff that's going on here. It's not just, a simple Band-Aid.
Okay.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same page, but line 757. Could you just comment to the fluctuations or the volatility of that? I'm not sure what that up and down,
Hold on one second, Brian.
That's for health.
They
Is that a
repurpose
shared
a nurse
position? I
position.
forget.
So this is nursing, right? So what we were doing is we brought on a halftime nurse in that school, and now we're not doing a halftime nurse. So we went from one nurse, and then during COVID, we brought on of 1.5 nurses to deal with that, and then we dropped back down to 1.
Well, that sort of makes sense, if I can do a follow-up. But back in '22 and '23, marginally close, went up really high in '24.
Right.
Then it went, then at 25, then went down. Okay, all right. I think you answered my question. Sorry.
All right, 31.
Line
What was that?
802, lunch monitors? I don't ever remember seeing this on the budget before. Are those stipends for,
We have folks that come in during the lunch period to help with the overall supervision of lunch. And it was simply because of the number of kids that we have in the lunches. I mean, it's a lot of kids in that lunchroom. So rather than having teachers pull duties, which again, when you have 25, all of this was an effort to try to deal with these high classroom sizes and give teachers a bit of a break. So this seemed to be a low-cost alternative in terms of giving them, rather than having to pull duties for lunchroom duty, we hired lunch monitors so that they could then get a breather and deal with their 20, 25 kids.
because if a teacher worked that lunch, then they would get no break at all that day?
It significantly lowers that break, and then this also then became part of the teacher's contract where they, the teacher's contract, especially for elementary school, because it's not like it's high school where they teach certain blocks and certain classes. At the elementary school, the only breaks they get are when there's a special like gym or art or music, and then they're on the rest of the time. Then they also have duties on top of that, so this was part of their collective bargaining agreement where they would get lunch monitors and help in to not be on duties as much. So they would have more time for prepping.
Okay.
All right, page 31. We're on 31. Oh, Laura.
Thank you. So line 793, that's paraprofessional lunch monitors. So there's the paras that do some lunch duty, and then there's, I don't want to say extra because they're needed, but then there's outside of that. Those are two different lines, and that's what that is.
Well, no, one is FICA. Which one were you talking about? I see your one in 793. That makes sense.
793.
Yep. And what was the other one someone was mentioning?
the one that-
That's just the insurance on it.
No, sorry, then the one that Elizabeth mentioned.
802, which was the one she stated?
802 is just FICA. That's the social security that we pay on
Yeah.
those wages.
Wait,
so.
then what were we?
I thought we were all talking about the same thing, which was
Maybe
the fact that we have
maybe
lunchroom
I just
monitors.
misheard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think I probably said the wrong line.
No, it's okay.
then never
I
mind.
meant the salaries for lunch monitors.
Continue to pay them.
32.
So lines 843 and 844, it looks like just from this that we're paying our assistant principal substantially more than our principal, but.
There's
The assistant
more of
principal
them.
has two lines, so that's the dean of students and the assistant principal is in that line. So there's two people in that.
In that assistant principal line?
Correct.
Okay.
And then we had a change of
Principals.
principal, so that's why you see a slight decrease in that.
So, can you clarify this for me, Scott? The
Sure.
2024 actuals was 180K.
Can you tell me the line?
I'm sorry, yeah, it's the assistant principal, 844.
Yeah.
But the budget was 91. Was that because it was a default budget, the school board chose to fund that position?
No, this was a transfer, so we moved
Yeah.
from a different line into that line
What line did you take from?
for 2024.
I'm trying to think, I think it was a teacher at the high school, I'm not positive, but I know we repurposed like, I think it might have been an alt teacher, alternative ed, where we moved that position from alt ed. We absorbed that into the high school, and then we had a couple of positions. That was one of them.
Okay. Everybody all good? Brian?
Page 34,
Page 34?
yeah, line number 861. I noticed there's an increase of $2,600
Yeah.
for voice communications.
This is part of the IT work that we're trying to do, that I know is kind of new.
It's a new phone
It's a
system.
new phone system,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's not only for Maple, but going into the entire district.
Okay.
So you're going to see kind of like that overview that we had of, we're trying to spend on IT.
Yeah.
This is one of those subcomponents of that.
Okay.
Okay, 34 and 35. And then the top of 36 wraps up Maple Ave. Any questions, rest of Maple Ave? All right, I'm gonna take a 9-minute break. We'll get back at 7:45.
Very
It's
specific.
7:36, so 7:45. I like
Nice
even
round
numbers.
numbers. I'm in favor. I like it.
I don't know.
9 minutes.
8.5 now.
That's how I regulate myself, so. We're adjourned till 7:45. We are back in business. We are plugging away at the school budget. We are on page, I lost track.
36,
Hold on.
676.
Page 36. We're beginning Glen Lake. Peter.
Can I just ask a quick
Yes, go
clarifying
ahead.
question back from Maple? Because afterwards, I was just trying to get a sense, the assistant principal jump that we were talking about, and then the moving it over, remind me, what's in that salary line for assistant principal
So-
Maple?
So the Maple one is the assistant principal and the dean of students.
And what's the difference between 23 and 24 in terms of our actuals? So, because you had 92,000 in 23 and 180,000 in 24.
That's when we moved it, the line was last year.
So, but I'm saying, you moved the line, but there wasn't, was it a position shift like?
Yeah,
you-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's a
we-
budget transfer.
So we took, as Scott said previously, we took I think it was a full-time teacher position at the high school, and we repurposed that into that line.
So which position did that become?
Dean of students.
The dean of students, so there wasn't a specific dean of students?
There was not a dean of students prior to that year.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
All right, I am in Glen Lake. Page 36.
So was Glen Lake the one that had $100 of new spending?
No, they cut it.
That got cut?
They had
Don't spend it all in
a
one place.
reduced budget, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, page 38.
Never lived that one down.
37. I don't want to move too quick, but
Can I ask a question that is not on one of these lines, but is still hopefully relevant? The model students that attend, the 3 and 4-year-olds, do those children pay tuition?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah. And we try to, from a policy standpoint with the model students, we want to have, I think it's one model student versus 3 or 4 non-model, or something along those lines. It's kind of like a 1 to 4 mentality. So if we have a bunch of individuals that are going into early IEPs, we try to get as many number of role model students. So there are points where, I don't think we've declined role model students
We've had
recently.
a hard time getting role.
Yeah, so we try to take as many as we can at this point for grades, ages 3 and 4.
Do you guys have any ideas why you've had trouble getting students?
It was after COVID, and
Oh.
the other issue is that it's a half-day program. So parents or guardians have to deal with the other half of the program. So
Okay.
is the rate we charge for those model students competitive with other daycare, or is it a little less, a little more?
I'd say it's a little less. I mean,
Just curious.
yeah, a little less.
I
We do
think
do
that
an
there's so much
analysis.
variation among daycare programs.
yeah.
I mean, if you go to like New Morning School in Bedford, it's a lot of money versus other schools are substantially less. I think there's just a huge variation.
And those students are so important for the development of other students that do have the IEPs. That's why it's so important. So, if this budget committee thinks that we're running below market for the revenue source, that's something that I think we need to consider, because those are students that we need in the school to help us develop those social emotional skills for IEP students at grades, or ages 3 and 4.
And, the beauty of GTV is that you get text messages from the principal. We aim for 50% of them.
That's what it
That's
was.
fast.
Thank you,
Wonderful,
Kathy.
thank you.
Real time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Kathy.
Yeah.
Well, I have to imagine that it teaches compassion to those, what's it called?
IEP students?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, the people that are mentoring teaches them good values.
So Goffstown always had a reputation for its special ed programs in that investing a lot in these early years, but then moving kids out of, not out of IEP, but they maybe need less services as they grow older because there's so much early intervention. Is that still the case?
I
or
think it's a
have we
very
changed
fair
our policy?
statement, but I also think when you heard the presentation from Principal Stoyl, that we're seeing more significant developmental issues with with students who are, preschool age, because they're eligible to come in and get services starting at 3 years old. And the needs of those students is much greater than it has been, before. So, and that could range from students who are nonverbal, because I know we're seeing, more of that. So that's always the goal, Elizabeth, is to all of the studies and research shows that if you can do a lot of interventions early on, you set students up for success later on in their academic lives. But now, and that's still the case, but I think what we're seeing more now is that the level of challenge with these students is way higher than it was, say, 10 years ago. So a lot more. And you hear those stories, like in the media too, in terms of you have parents who may not be in the picture for whatever reason. There are, in some cases, children who may have been dependent upon drugs or were in a drug household. So there's a whole range of reasons, but the staff there says it's much more challenging than ever in terms of the early childhood education part.
Samantha and Brian.
So, because there's an element of people paying to go to that school, do we invite people from other towns to pay to come to that?
Generally, no.
Okay.
Generally, they are Goffstown, and we try to reserve it for Goffstown, because as Jared stated, we charge a rate that is pretty attractive, and we want that to be to the benefit of Goffstown citizens.
Is there any, I guess, it probably wouldn't help with like class size at all, because I'm trying to remember like the billboards of like how many children were in a class. It wouldn't benefit to like have kids from other towns pay a higher rate to go there at all.
I think that's probably a moot issue, because right now
It would-
we only.
yeah. It would probably be really
And
insignificant.
I don't even think we have a full complement of role model students at this point. So I don't think that.
It wouldn't help, really.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I know that when we look at the rates, we try to make it so that it's attractive and affordable
Yeah.
for the program.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Brian.
Thank you, Chair. What page are we on?
We're on 38, 39.
I have a question on page 40, so
Okay, great.
can I field it?
Yeah,
or-
ask your question.
Okay,
Go
so row 1026, I'm assuming that's the speech assistant, and it's not a new position, is that just a transfer?
Yeah, hold on a second. Just bear with me 1 second. I think you're right, the 2150, yes, that is a speech assistant. Yep,
And it's just a transfer?
yes.
Okay, from,
I'd have to look.
Yeah, we gotta
look that-
start keeping track of what Mr. Bulkey gives us for.
Yeah, I can look, I can also look it up in our
Okay, yeah,
presentation.
we have a couple minutes. So let's, I'm up to page 40, let's look through that.
no.
Page 41, while I give Scott some time. No pressure.
No pressure. If I can, I'll get it to you another day, but let me see if I can find it.
So line 1058, if I remember correctly, that's a jump from a half-time to a full-time position?
That's correct.
That's the other half was the Bartlett.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to split one between Bartlett and Glen Lake. I think it was like 3 to 2, 3 days and 2 days. This is fulfilling the assistant principal solely at Glen Lake.
Okay,
And that was from a transfer from an open position that we had.
okay.
I'm not a huge fan of it, but I know I probably don't have the votes to reduce that, so I'm not going to.
Well, and one thing I want to, if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
You know, this is also succession planning. We have a number of senior administrators that are going to be leaving in the next few years. So I understand the angst that was at the other meeting about some of the motions, but this is also a opportunity to put people in the position that will eventually probably succeed into those senior roles. So, you know, we talk about setting up for the future. This is one of those that maybe we're spending a little bit more, but this is so that when people do retire, we have the people ready to go, and not having a half-time assistant principal then converting to a full-time principal potentially once that person retires. So we see this at Glen, you'll see this potentially at the high school and other areas as well. This is making sure that we have that succession planning in place.
I would also point out that, you know, this position is a little different. The principal's role at Glen Lake is a little different because she actually does go to the home and visit every single 3rd and 4th grade, or I'm sorry, 3 and 4-year-old child coming into the school. And she spends, you know, a half a day or a full day with the family trying to assess the child's needs. And so she's off campus a lot, and there's no dean of students at Glen Lake. There's not a lot of other administrative support. So having a full-time assistant principal here, I think, is really important because you got to have somebody in a position of authority at that campus with our youngest and most vulnerable population.
Anything else, page 41? Scott, did you get? It's all
I'm
right,
still
you can get
looking.
back to it.
It's like an HR type thing.
No problem.
I'm gonna keep trying.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, tied back to my previous question, is it too much to ask or too much of an effort, since we're kind of going through all the schools in the district, to get a compilation of all the transfers?
No, I think that's a reasonable request, and that is something that the superintendent gives the school board as
Okay.
we go through and make those decisions, because that is something that I know I ask for, and as well
Okay.
as others. I think just pulling that list together, and maybe we can bring it to our next meeting or when it's
Okay.
ready, if people are okay with that, we can take that action item.
Yeah.
When I
I'm
say
good
we,
with
I
that.
mean that guy over there's taking that action item.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
It always goes
Well,
in
it should
there.
already pretty much be made,
It's
right?
made, we just have to pull all the different
Yeah.
documents that we have from all our
You
different
got that,
meetings.
Doug?
I think that'd be helpful.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I'm on page 42. And then page 43 and 2 lines into 44 is the rest of Glen Lake. Let's take a look at that. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 43 still, up row 1108, sorry, 1102, excuse me. I see a reduction in maintenance, which is a good thing, but wasn't sure what that's relating to.
Facility. It says facilities
Yeah.
in the presentation, modest decreases in propane, and then there's minor decreases in repair and maintenance lines based on actuals.
So.
That's what the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at the actuals and the maintenance charges there were less than, that was one. And then the other, remember I explained at the last meeting how we did this project?
Yeah.
And we're hoping to see some reduced maintenance, energy costs, that was part of that.
Okay.
So we try to, I gotta tell you, like, the electricity and the propane are like the two hardest things to try to project and budget, it's
Yeah.
like they're all over the board. So when I look back, especially this school, I'm like, oh my God, I've been wrong more times than I've been right. But we're hoping that we're going to see savings at some of our schools, so.
Well, I just forget that, like, commodities and utilities are in that line. That's why so, thank you.
Yeah, this is more like, building type maintenance, so.
Yeah.
And then we hope too that, new boilers, we'll pay less for repairs, hopefully, on certain
Yeah,
things, so.
okay.
Great. Any other questions on Glen Lake? Principal Stoyle, you can go to bed now. We're all good.
I don't see anything in here for the dog in the wheelchair.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Was that Henry?
Yeah, it's on the
How-
tour.
Harold.
Yeah.
He's on the tour.
Cute little
It's a
dog.
service dog, he's got a little wheelchair.
I think
Okay.
she covers those costs personally.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta go there for the dog.
So I'm on page 44 with Maple Ave, or sorry, Mountain View Middle School.
So I'm trying to find it in here, but I thought I saw a slide somewhere that there were several positions that Mountain View had requested that had not been included in
Yeah.
the budget, teaching positions.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a question for Superintendent Baldke, but what is the impact of not hiring those positions?
Well, some of it is not only not hiring, but not finding the appropriate candidates. For instance, like middle school French.
Yeah.
Couldn't find a candidate for it, so we had to repurpose that, or that was an open position.
Is that open now? Like it's open this year?
No, we've decided to move away from, I think, French as a top language for next year.
Oh, really?
For this year.
Then I have to double check on that. I know that we've had challenges with world language teachers. I just don't know if we got lucky in finding one. So I have to, if Brian was here, he would know. I just don't know if that's the case. I don't know if we've abandoned French at this point.
Didn't we also talk about ASL at the middle school? Has
Yes.
that been something that the school board's been pursuing? or-
They were talking about, in lieu of a world language,
Right.
what else could we offer? But I think I don't want to speak out of ignorance, 'cause I just don't know the answer. I'd have to follow up.
Okay. I think that was a really cool idea.
Yeah, I would like to know what languages are being offered at the middle school. So I don't expect you to, I'm not trying to put you on
Go
the
to the
spot here.
curriculum committee, They have that.
Jack or Lauren, either of you have an idea?
As far as,
What languages are taught at the middle school? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but there's multiple school board members here, so.
I mean, Mr. Chair, thank you. Admittedly, I'm a very new member, but I can say as a parent, it was Spanish, last I knew. They got rid of French, and when I was privileged to be a member of your budget committee, I remember from a tour, Principal Milligan was saying she would love to get ASL in
Yes,
there.
that's right.
But it was a funding issue, and it was also, let's see if we can find the candidates. But last I knew, it was just Spanish.
Okay, thank you very much. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 44, row 1131, I believe. Similar question, I see a reduction in general supplies, math. I was trying to look for notes about what that's entailing.
Because we purchased a new math curriculum, when we purchased it, they gave us some supplies as part of the initial purchase.
The initial package? or something?
Yeah, so we won't need as much
Gotcha.
this next year.
So does that mean moving forward, it's going to go back up? Maybe
Yeah.
potentially-
Like
Okay,
consumables.
It's consumables. yeah.
gotcha, all right. Thank
That
you.
was true at Maple too. That went down, that line
Yeah.
also went down at Maple.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, and it was Assistant Superintendent Kohler negotiated that, so a lot of times when you negotiate a curriculum, they throw in these consumables as
Gotcha.
a package deal, and so then you save a little money in the first or second year type of thing.
Okay.
All right, page 45. Laura?
Thank you. Just a curiosity question, line 1166 for testing. Is that consumables or software or?
No, a lot of our testing is done using a computer, but you have to pay a fee for each one,
Oh, for the actual test?
for the actual
Okay.
test, so. Yeah, but that's, that one is it's a testing specific line. I'll look at the notes on that, if we have notes on that, we don't, okay. That was just, I think, based upon
Oh, sorry.
what we were spending.
Is that one of the ones where the state requires the test and then they require us to pay for the test?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think.
There's a couple of those
Yeah.
coming up, but it's not, I don't think
It's
it's
not
that
this
one.
one.
I was thinking dyslexia testing was a new thing, right?
No, that's another law you
Yeah,
passed that we.
I don't know, it's hard to keep track. Peter, do you have something?
Yeah, 1149, line 1149, we're looking at health insurance. I was kind of just looking at it relative to, on the previous page, is teacher salaries. I thought this year we weren't going to be seeing as big of a jump. on
That's
health
true,
insurance.
yeah.
So are these, like, the numbers here, I mean, your actuals in 2024 were 788, but we're asking for 994 for 26.
Right, and that, it's a, health insurance and the number of staff that you have in a building can be somewhat volatile, meaning that there are other schools, if you've noticed in some of the other lines, where the health insurance was flat, decreased, et cetera. So people, they have life events, so they get married, they have children, and so you go from a single plan to a family plan, those things happen. You have people that did not take insurance because perhaps their spouse or significant other had insurance, so then they, now all of a sudden, that circumstance changed, that person might have, switched jobs, and now they're the one who has to get the insurance. So it's all over the board on this.
Is that going, that's what's going into the calculus for coming up with the 994
The calculus is based upon who are the current people in the job as of when our HR director did this import, and what health insurance elections they took. So if in the prior year, there were different people at Mountain View, or if they were on a different health plan and they changed in the course of this past year, then that would be reflected in the 2026 projection.
All right, so to be, again, you're saying the 994 is the projection based off of the actual staffing now?
You got it.
Not
Correct.
assuming worst-case scenario?
No.
It's
It's
nothing like that?
actual staffing now and the elections that they have taken now.
Okay.
We do not have any new positions, so we don't budget. When we do budget, we budget a two-person, when we budget for a brand spanking new position, but we don't have any here, so.
Get some cheaper people over there.
Can't do that,
I know.
Doug.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, isn't this the thing where you get these, like lock-in rates or something like that, and they change when the actuals come in or something, and it's always higher?
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because I thought I explained it. That was the
Yeah.
way that they used to do it.
Uh-huh.
So Health Trust is the health insurance and dental provider for SAU 19, and then they give you what's called a guaranteed maximum rate. So all towns and school districts can plan and do their budgets, and then later on, they then tell you what it's going to be. And more often than not, it's less, right?
Do you think that'll be affected here?
No, because they changed their methodology,
Okay.
and now, going forward, they're gonna give us our actual rate by mid-October, so.
We
I
were
don't know
able
what-
to incorporate that
so
into this
that-
budget.
What you see is what we get. And that will be going, so Doug will be at a little bit of a disadvantage, I think, in that case, so we're gonna have to talk about how we're gonna address that, but we might not be able to, we'll be the school board more so, because by the time we give it to you folks, we know the health insurance, rate, but not when the school board gets it, we're working off that guaranteed maximum, so we're gonna have to take a guess at it, and then by the time you get it, it'll be the actual.
The actuals.
Yeah, if I can just expand on that. Doug, you're exactly correct. When we got the budget, we were looking at maximum rate, and then when Scott came back, basically right when we were done the budget, ready to forward it here, he said, hey, they actually gave us what the rate was, and we adjusted those numbers before it came to this board. So we were able to do that.
And we're down significantly.
Yep. So no more late Christmas presents, huh?
Unfortunately, no.
I'm lost. Page 46. What? So page 46. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a clarifying question, to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. On row 1193, I see a significant difference between 25 budget and 26 default. There's nothing new, but is that increase based upon contractual obligations?
Just gonna, bear with me a second.
Special ed teacher line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that one would simply be, I gotta check my notes, because I don't wanna speak. I could have sworn that, I'm not sure if it was a para, but I thought we might have moved a position, but I wanted to just double check.
Well, some of the noteworthy changes was new teacher and partial student laptop lease. What?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's a new teacher, but it's under
Yeah, I'm
special
looking.
ed.
Yeah. And that's, might have been the case where we moved a teacher, which I think we did.
Okay.
To Mountain View due to the needs at that school.
So perhaps in that pending report,
You'll see that,
we'll have
hopefully.
that granularity. All right.
Right.
That'll be helpful. So maybe I shouldn't ask more questions if that's going to be forthcoming.
You're welcome to ask as many questions
I
as
know,
you
I
wish.
know, I just,
Page 48.
we do 47?
47.
Sorry, page 47.
Excellent.
I guess I have a tiny concern. I know this, I don't want to be like making a mountain out of a mole, but line 1218, like you've only budgeted 300 for it, but the actual show 2810. And I realize, I mean, it's something that we have to pay, but shouldn't we just budget more for that?
That was just 1 year, so this is one of those new line items, so we don't know what truly is going to be, and we're trying to look for additional data points to understand that.
Thanks.
Page 48. Page 49.
Sorry, really quickly
Go
on
ahead.
48. For guidance services teachers, remind me, is that, I'd have to look back, is that an additional person that was moved to middle school? That's, sorry, that is 1243. And the change might have actually happened as of throughout 22.
Yeah, that was prior years, so that is just the existing staffing that we have. Also, please note that some that are collective bargaining agreements also call for when people get educational attainment. So if they have a bachelor's degree, they retain them. They get a master's, they get a bump in pay. So you might have a few of those that pop up, or you could have somebody who came from another school, and now, you know, that new person was making more money when they left another
Yeah.
school. So that does happen as well.
Yeah, and honestly, as I read over it again, I realized that the biggest change was really from 2022.
Okay.
Page 49. Page 50. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this may be tied to my previous questions on row 1289. I see a reduction. Speech pathology, odd teachers. Is that
I don't think we moved any bodies out.
just a reduction in pay?
Maybe different. And that could be tied to the Glen Lake thing. It's possible, you know?
Okay.
So like when we move hours, like,
Yeah.
so with speech is delivered in units or hours of
Okay.
time. And because we don't have enough speech personnel, employees within the district, they sometimes split time between different schools, and then we apportion their pay accordingly.
So it's weighted differently based on
Yeah,
whether-
so if the
Okay.
needs for speech are more prevalent at, say, Mountain View than they are at Bartlett, then we might move somebody and say, hey, please work an extra day here and one, you know, one more day here and take it off of your days there. And then
Yeah.
we move their salary accordingly to get those units of speech. I think it could be tied into, you know, Glen Lake as well. I don't have enough information readily available to me to make that determination. But when I do see decreases in one school and increases in another, sometimes it's that shift in hours, so.
Okay, thank you.
In our other notes section, this is the employment of one FTE for this position for next year. So we might have had somebody at 1.2 this year, but for next year, it's just one employee in this position for the middle school.
Okay.
Page 51.
I know I might seem obsessed with this, and maybe I'm just hungry, but you guys don't have lunch monitors at Mountain View? So what happens at lunch?
It's a free-for-all.
That's-
No,
that cannot be
that's
true.
not
Lord of the
true,
Flies.
everybody on TV, no.
My daughter keeps everyone in line. She's a rule follower.
You know, I've been there. Our dean of students is one individual that's there. Believe it or not, we have, a lot of our administrators are there. And it's also their way of connecting with the students during that. So you have a great opportunity where you have different classes and, you know, teachers help out and others, but administrators are there to connect with students at that time. And it is interesting to see the difference between the 5th grade and the 8th grade, you know, because, yeah, it's predominantly, there are no monitors, but they're very well under control, in my opinion. So seems to work out really well.
Peter.
If I remember correctly, I thought part of the monitors at the elementary school was also about specifically supporting those teachers.
Teachers,
And how
yeah.
that, you know, how that environment is working anyway. So I think it is a different situation.
It's a different operations model between, you're exactly right, Peter.
I love it when you say that.
Hey.
All right, we're moving to page 52. Break.
Line 1352, Office of the Principal, Assistant Principal salary. Is that two positions?
It's three. I think it's three. Because they have a dean of students and
Yeah.
two assistant principals, I'm pretty sure.
3.
So that's a dean and two,
You have a curriculum coordinator.
That's what it
and
is.
a principal.
Say again?
You have a dean of students, a curriculum coordinator, and an assistant principal.
Thank you.
okay, thanks.
Can we go to 53? Peter.
Sorry, so back to health insurance again. So Office of the Principal Health Insurance, 2024 actuals were 110. What we're getting for next year is 177. I'm just saying, like,
It's just the plans that people take.
I'm not trying to say they shouldn't be taking the plans they're taking, but I'm just trying to look at the raw numbers of like where my money is going.
Yeah.
And like overall, these do look like bigger jumps than I guess I had in my mind. I was like, okay, better year, we're not getting all these jumps.
Because
but
you're
these are-
looking at it line by line. I mean, if I
haven't found a line that's gone down yet, though.
okay, hold on.
On insurance.
I'll just do a quick pivot table and I'll give you the line, so.
But I'm thinking about them all together.
Yeah, yeah,
They keep on,
I can-
every single time I'm
I
saying,
can
like,
do
it's
that,
going
like-
up by 40%, 50%.
I can do that really easily. Just give me a second. 211. If you want to keep going, I'll get it.
I'm on page 53. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just out of curiosity, row 1362, I see a reduction in 26 default. Is that because someone has retired? I'm assuming, or something else? I'm trying to understand that a little better.
Is there a long time?
No, this is,
Or a transfer or shifting? I have no idea.
anything, if they have a different, like, benefit package, it's just who's in the role at the time. So, if we had a particular in this case, it's administrator, that administrator no longer has that in their, either in their contract or is not taking
Okay.
that, then we don't, it would not be there. So we
Gotcha,
just,
okay.
and I hope that what's reflected in this is that when there's an increase, there's an increase. When there's a decrease, and we try to call the balls and strikes appropriately. And you're seeing decreases because we don't expect to have that.
Yeah.
And we're not keeping things level just for the sake of keeping them level. So when we can decrease, we are decreasing.
And I appreciate that, because I
Yeah.
like, look at the numbers, it's also good to have the context too.
Right,
So I
right.
appreciate that.
We're finishing on page 53, Peter. You're asking where we were.
Oh,
Page
and I
54.
just wanted to make sure I didn't miss insurance part.
Because we're on 112.
What?
I said we're on 112.
Page 112.
We're looking at next year's budget.
Fastest moving we've done.
So Peter, the overall, the health insurance is less than the current year's budget. And
So overall,
Overall,
As an aggregate, yeah.
as an aggregate, health insurance of the 2025 budget that we're in right now is $7,029,038. And next year, their proposed is $6,993,245.
Okay.
What is,
Not the exact number.
the, increased expenses for the end of year graduation ceremony? What is that $2,300 for?
So.
Didn't
the-
they used to do it at St. A's or
we-
something?
Well,
We're back at St. A's.
We're back to St. A's. So we went to Fisher Cat Stadium
Okay.
during COVID, and now we're back at St. A's. When you were at St. A's, we rent from them for one. We have to bring in and rent chairs, but they partner with the high school on this. So in the morning is the Mountain View Middle School promotion, and then in the evening is the high school graduation. And I only know all this because I literally just signed the contract this week.
Okay.
So they have to pay to bring a supplemental sound system in, some staging, chair rental, and there is also audio visual that is included in that. So they bring a company in, because they do like a slideshow and stuff like that. So that's,
Okay.
so it's the rental from St. A's and all the other stuff.
What line is this?
I'm sorry, I'm on line 1390.
And I believe this was a line that we tried to have in the proposed budget last year that failed.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
just another,
Yep.
we're trying to bring it to actuals of what we spend.
Police details are in that too, I think, so we have to have police detail for both of them.
All right, I'm moving on to page 55.
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Doug?
1411 line, I'd like to understand what that repair is about.
Sure. So just like any of our school buildings, Doug, we budget for plumbing, HVAC, roofing, all of those based upon actuals from prior years. It's difficult because, you just don't know what needs repair per se, but it's pretty common that we always have plumbing, we always have electrical, we always have roofing, types of repairs. We do, for the sake of our facilities director, we do break it down, and I'll share that with you in a second. So for electrical repairs, we budgeted $6,500, for heating HVAC, $10,500, glass replacement, $3,000, exterior repairs, including catch basins, $10,000, duct cleaning, $2,000, painting projects, $5,000, elevator repairs, $5,000, and sprinkler system repairs, $8,000. And the biggest one of all is sprinkler system repairs. The building is 30-plus years, and it seems like we're replacing sections of sprinkler piping every darn year. So that's what makes up the 50.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, so page 55, top of page 56 finishes up Mountain View.
And I'm sorry, the cistern is, funding for that is coming out of where? The
We're
cistern?
going to be talking with the school board about that, and we're going to be looking to use the CRF. So the deposit for the CRF, the majority of that's going to go towards that cistern project, which we're hoping to get done in the summer of 2025. And that's going to be around $300,000 for that.
Okay.
All right. I'm planning on powering through, so we just have the high school left. Page 56. page 57. Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Page 58.
Thank you.
Brian.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Let's see here. Page 58, row 1494. And this is kind of a broader question. Is there a list of all the, I guess, memberships, associations that the school is part of? Because my question is the broader, and it's going to come up in the town deliberation as well, is that if there's an organization that is, I guess, a lobbyist or does advocacy to the state, I think that is, they may provide value to the town or school, but if they're a lobbyist and they're lobbying the legislature, I think it's inappropriate for taxpayers to fund that. So I want to get a listing of all those associations and in fact, are they lobbying the
Can you just
legislature?
give me that row number one more time? I'm sorry.
Well, this in general.
1494.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll rattle them off for you. Or Doug, you want to do it?
Or get a listing because.
Well, we have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So most of this has to do with music and all-state performances, so 700 to Music, New Hampshire National Music Educators Association, 1,000 to art, fees to participate in the Scholastic Art Awards, $410 to New Hampshire Science and Engineering Expo, $100 to Moodle Association membership, $8,125 to All-State Music Participation, 25 students at $325, and $1,600 to Performing Arts fees for ensemble participation costs. Is a breakdown of that.
So
And I know you had a broader question,
What
but
you're
that's a
referring
breakdown.
to is when you get to the 2410, which is the admin, there are some in there for an association for curriculum, and that's what you're referring to. In terms of lobbying, the New Hampshire School Boards Association is a component of what they do is lobbying. But that's not in this budget. Or I shouldn't say the dues are in this, but please know that they also provide free legal, they provide all of our policies. They do advocate for a bill or speak, I don't know how, I mean, you go to these things, but what they do is like tremendous in terms of value.
Mr. Chair, as a follow-up, and I'm not arguing that they don't provide value
Yeah.
across the board. I guess what I'm wrestling with, again, is they can't say they're truly neutral. So to me, if they're not truly neutral, then why should the citizens pay into something that's not truly neutral? That's my argument. So if it's not too much effort, I'd love to get a listing of those so I can do my own due diligence. But on the town side, which will be reserved for the town, I have an argument on that one. But to me, it's like, I think it's, yeah, I wrestle with it, and I think a lot of my constituents wrestle with it too, because again, they could add value, but I'm stuck in the whole aspect that they truly are not neutral when they advocate at the legislature.
And just to put a little context in this, like, there's always a bill every year to restrict public funds being spent on lobbying. I've always voted no against that because I think it's a local decision. So if like we decide as a board that we don't want to fund the municipal association, for instance, or school board association, like that's our purview. But to totally restrict the town's rights to be able to lobby for themselves, that's where I have a problem with it, unless the local, like the town makes that decision themselves. So you have a good question. I'd love to look into it too, but it is a
Yeah.
local thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
Thanks. So this particular line, 1494, does not have to do with what Brian just
No.
asked
It's
about.
music and art
it's not,
membership
Right.
yeah.
primarily.
Do we know what line,
Yeah,
what line,
2410, it would be, hold on,
I'm wondering, I want to see that dollar amount.
2410.
My question was premature, I just wanted to.
No, I understand,
It
yeah.
should be 2410, 811.
I don't.
No,
ours
it's
doesn't
probably
go-
in the admin line.
It's in the
We've already
admin
been through
line,
them.
right, yeah.
It's at the beginning of our packet.
Oh,
Right.
no.
What?
No, not necessarily. Each school has it, so I'm sorry, not the reference line, it's the function.
Oh, okay.
You must have a different paper than I.
Where's the rest of it?
Okay, I made a boo-boo there.
2410s, okay, they're 2410s.
2410, 811 would be reference line 1767.
Can we just put a star there and come back
So
to
he's
it?
saying
That
it's
would be great.
2410 function,
Let's
but
put,
in this
Oh, no, that's not it.
instance,
No, I skipped a page, hold on. It is, correct me, 1750.
okay, so I'm cool with us just putting a little star there,
Yeah.
come back to it.
Yeah, line 1750, I apologize.
1750.
1750 is your admin dues and
Find it
fees.
in each
I
Okay.
have a question.
Elizabeth.
Are we talking about registered lobbyists, or are we talking about groups that maybe show up and testify at a hearing?
No, there's a lobbyist that lobbies on behalf of the School Board Association.
So, and they're registered lobbyists?
And they
Like,
say,
so
I'm a
wear that little
lobbyist on
orange tag.
the Hunter Orange, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a lobbyist on behalf of the New Hampshire School Board Association.
Okay, so we're not talking about like a group a teacher's group that goes to a hearing on some bill
No.
and says, this is what I think. We're talking about people who are actually paid to be lobbyists. All right, just clarify.
Brian.
If I could just add to that, and again, we'll come up in the towns section, is like, we participate and fund and get good counsel, there's a value from the NHMA. However, they have a function within the NHMA where they lobby or advocate to the state legislature. So to me, and they can't come out in being neutral. I just know that from all the research I've done, so, and they can't guarantee they're neutral. So to me, I wrestle with that because, again, yes, we could value, but I don't think the citizens should be funding that, because again, they can't truly say they're neutral, so.
Laura.
That's not this line.
Yeah, I guess I'll hold
That's
it
not this
until we
packet.
go to, I know, I'll hold it until we get to the line, because I have some questions.
Yeah,
But I'll
and,
wait on
I
it.
mean, I'm sure the Goffstown School Board's membership on the School Board Association, we've already been through, right? We already went
Yeah,
through
that's
that
part of the
line.
district line.
That was part of the district
Yeah.
line, so there's spread throughout the school budget, depending on
Yeah.
the
But-
school, the subject area, things like that.
I think the ask, and that's what I was asking Scott, is can we get a comprehensive list of those? You know, I don't think we care about what we do, of like the dues that we pay into a music competition. But what you're looking for, I think we can get a list
And it's
of.
not, it's a very short list,
Yeah.
because it's the School Boards Association, it's the New Hampshire Association of School Principals.
Administrators.
And then, no, not even that, because that would not be, there is an Administrators Association. There's like 3 or 4. And the one that I am aware of is the School Boards Association does have folks that do wear the red
Hunter Orange.
Hunter Orange,
Hunter
whatever you
Orange,
want to
yeah.
call it.
It's in the state law.
But others don't, like, so if you're part of a curriculum association, they don't lobby.
Yeah,
Um,
and nothing to do with
That's,
accreditation.
that's
too,
easy
right?
enough, that's easy enough to get.
Okay,
I think
thank
there's
you.
like 5 or 6 on that list.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on page 59.
So
Elizabeth?
there's an, 1514. So there's an assistant principal's salary line in special ed and not in the principal's office?
No, that was moved, so you're gonna see that, if you look above, it was, you see the line above it, it was just, it was a coding, I think it was a coding issue, if I'm not mistaken with this person, where they were coded differently the prior year.
So we moved it from other support salaries down to the GHS special ed assistant principal salary?
Yes.
Because it's blank
Yeah.
in the default
It
for
should not have
26?
been,
So they're not an assistant principal?
they are, and they were not in that, they were not coded. So Kate, who's our HR director, came to me and said, hey, I don't think this person is coded right. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, she should have been a 117, it's a coding thing.
Okay.
We come across this all the time where things are not, lines should be coded.
So we don't have an assistant principal
No.
specifically slotted for special
No,
education?
it's called your your special ed facilitator. This is the person that deals with all of the students who have special needs within, say, Goffstown High School. So they're the ones who are, as mentioned, Doug mentioned, they're at every single one of those IEP meetings. They're working, we have a life skills program here at the high school. They're working with all those students and those families. That's their role. And then they manage and oversee all of the paraprofessionals. So they're the supervisor for all the paras in the building.
Peter?
This might be really hard to answer, but looking back, so at 1513, which is the line that it's taken from, do you remember at all why it was budgeted, why you were at least looking at a budget increase from 96,000 up to 160 for that year?
I do not know. I honestly don't.
Because we didn't end up with that, right, obviously, but
I just remember Kate asking me the question. I'm like, yes, this person is considered an administrator and they should be coded 117 dash. That's all I remember. I don't know beyond that.
yeah, because what I'm really asking about is more like going from 24 to 25, that seems like a, hey, we're shifting how we're operating here type of a budget
Yeah.
increase, right? That's not like a shift, like a small shift. That's, hey, we're trying to move something, we're trying to do something. We're going from this $196,000 to 160. Would you be able to find out like what it was that they were trying to accomplish initially?
I can certainly ask. I can ask that.
Thank you, Scott. You can always have Doug do it, too.
He won't know.
My to-do list tomorrow.
Right.
morning.
This one's big.
Thank you in advance.
Page 60. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, page 60, row 1546, vocational tuition, it has gone up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a good thing that their students want to do other things, but is that the case, that they were doing more
No,
placements?
Manchester School of Technology increased their rates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Strictly, that's a
Yeah.
pretty big hike. Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, it's still below what the actuals were in 2024.
2024 was an anomaly because Manchester School of Technology did not get their state reimbursement. And as part of the agreement with the schools that send kids to MST, the sending districts were required to take up their proportional shortfall.
Too bad we can't do that.
Right, but it was in our
1546,
contract
right? Correct.
with them,
Okay.
so.
That's
that-
going down, isn't it?
All right, page 61.
Well, it's stabilized.
That's just what they
Sorry, can I just
budgeted
back
for.
Go ahead,
up
Kelly.
to line 1540, please?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
is that?
It's now zeroed out. Scott deleted the title, and that's a correction.
That was just to make sure that you guys were paying attention and you do get the prize,
Which
so
slash
you get a free appetizer.
The one with the hash,
Yeah.
or the backslash, the hashtag.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations, Kelly. You get whatever you want.
Okay, great.
All right, anything else, page 61? 62?
sometimes with Kate's staffing sheet, how many things are canceled.
63.
See if I can figure it out.
What's the difference between gap and adult ed?
Should be the same thing.
Some things are coded gap and some things are coded adult ed.
If it's 1,600 series, it's just whoever, when they did the chart of accounts, that's how they put in those particular account codes. What you'll find, though, is that for the most part, our adult ed or the GAP program is now, it's a good thing, right? The state is contributing a lot towards that one.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, say that again?
What is
Yeah,
that?
say
Say that again?
The state contributes a good portion of that, or we found a way to get them to pay for a good portion of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do people pay for it as well?
Yeah,
You're taking.
yeah, they do, for some of the enrichment, et cetera, but the state helps with all of the like, the teacher part of it. We pay for the director, the secretary, but we get a lot of reimbursement from the state for people who are teaching the credit recovery piece. Enrichment, if you're taking, I don't know, like a yoga
Photography.
class or something, photography or welding, that you pay out of your pocket for as an enrichment class. But for students, if they don't do well academically here at Goffstown High School, their credit recovery part is during that GAP program. And we've done that historically for a long time now. And so those students the cost of that is largely subsidized. So they do pay, but it's largely subsidized by the state.
Brian.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'm on page 63, line 1622, the insurance buyout.
Yeah.
I guess to me, I think I understand it, but I guess my question is fundamentally, instead of going to the community for new taxation for 5,000, why couldn't that be funded some other way?
Help me.
There's an increase in default for $5,000 for an insurance buyout.
So the purpose, I mean, you know why contracts have that, I would assume, right? Does that, everybody know?
Well, you can, I'm not an expert because.
Oh, okay, that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
So a lot of the contracts that we have with our unions or even our personnel plans, et cetera, for school and I assume town is the same thing. If you're not taking the insurance, you get what's called an insurance buyout. So the presumption is that the district might have to spend $20-something thousand on a health insurance plan, but if you don't take it, if you go on another person's plan, you're saving the district a lot of money, so it almost incentivizes others to go elsewhere for their health insurance. You could have a situation, and that's what it's there for, is to incentivize people to hopefully go elsewhere and not have the district pay for the health insurance.
And I think you see that if you look down to line 1625, you'll see that the health insurance overall has gone down by probably like one person, because that one person, instead of costing the district $23 or so thousand, now it's $5,000 to buy out that health insurance. So
Samantha.
that-
I was gonna ask, so is that $5,000 buyout, are they locked into it even in the case of like a qualifying life event?
If they had a qualifying life event, that would be something that the HR director would work with them, because you can't double dip.
Right, that's what I mean, so like if
Yes.
I'm a teacher
Yes.
and I take the buyout.
Yes.
And then I get married.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't sign
You-
up and keep my 5,000.
Correct, that's a conversation with HR. I'm not aware of any situations like that, but.
Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't happen a lot, but.
That would be, you can't collect twice, though, so.
All right. I'm going to page.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to stay on that one thing, but I guess I just wonder, like, is that really an incentive? I mean, if they went with their like spouse's healthcare plan, they probably went with it because it was a better plan. do we need to do a buyout? I mean, my
And
employment doesn't have an
doesn't-
insurance buyout.
That's something that you can direct to the school board when they negotiate
Well, it's in
contracts
the-
going forward, but it's not something that
Okay.
we can control.
Yeah, we can't really touch it now because it's
Yeah,
part of the teacher
right.
union.
Okay.
Yep.
CBA. Page 64. Page 65.
Chair,
Brian.
64, just question, curiosity, row 1650, the increase in default, like 13,000, is that like salary increases, merit pay?
Hold on.
Health, GHS, teacher salaries, I'd imagine that's part of the,
Yeah,
GEA.
that is a GEA contract.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha, thank you.
And again, recognizing that sometimes people, I don't know how the staffing is in here, but
Yeah.
in some buildings, if a person comes and we hire them new and they have on a different step and track, then we're paying them
Yeah.
more. If they got their masters, you might pay, all those types of things can
Gotcha.
come into play.
All right.
65.66. Allison.
Scott, what's an information access fee on line 1709?
17.
Is that like databases or?
That's what I'm asking.
Oh, we got a lot of that. So that one's, is that media? Oh, it's easy. So that's Gale.
Yeah.
It's a database of, for our media center. You'll see that it went down on that one.
Yeah.
Mountain Views went up. We basically, rather than buying two different licenses, we combined and bought a district license to overall save some money. But what happened was, the high school was over budgeted and Mountain View was under budgeted, so we raised Mountain View and we decreased this one. But it's all of the, if you're ever doing any type of research, it's all of those types of electronic databases that.
Meaning the kids do research, like for school
Oh,
type
yeah.
research?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's anything from newspapers and magazines and,
Like our old microfiche, back in the
man,
day?
you guys are really back in the day.
Really back in the day.
I remember Gail. I
You
remember
do?
Gail.
That means you're young.
Well,
I remember
wow.
EBSCO host.
EBSCO
Yeah.
host? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like that
That's
stuff.
still around?
It's
Yeah,
Gale.
yeah,
Still
EBSCO.
around?
Yeah.
All set, Allison? Good.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 67, row 1725.
Right, we're on page 67.
I'm not jumping ahead?
It's all right.
Go for it.
Do it.
The stipends, I know we don't have much history. What's that relating to?
Hold on.
Stipends.
It's
GHS
admin,
stipends.
high school stipends.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure I'm answering it right.
It's the GEA.
I don't know. Just bear with me a sec.
Yeah.
Do you have notes on that?
We don't, no.
Hold on. I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I don't remember this one. 17. Let me just do a little research on that one.
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
Anything else on 67? We'll move to 68.
That's why I'm gonna look at last year's budget.
Kelly?
Lines 1761. Some miscellaneous expenditures.
I think that's graduation. Let me just double check.
What line was that?
I think 1761, I think that's graduation.
It is graduation, yep.
Thank you.
It's Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 68 as well, row 1767, dues and fees. Is that relating to the physics day field trip?
Yes.
Yes. I thought you and Peter would duke it out in the hallway for that one, though.
What's the physics day field
What?
trip?
What am I doing on
Well,
this?
so,
Didn't you say something like we spent half an hour on a field trip or something? I thought that was you.
We did,
I'm just,
yeah.
I was only talking about the dollar.
Okay, all right,
Okay?
all right.
There's no,
What is it?
well, I think they presented.
You weren't
to
here
us-
for that?
Presented on it, maybe.
Oh, watch the video, it was very exciting.
Oh, all right, I'll go back and watch the video. That must have been the night I was sick, so I'll go back and watch the video.
oh, it doesn't work. I can't swear if I just press this, can I?
He might pick up our element.
Yeah.
What, I'm gonna make a motion to strike this item
I'll second it.
Strike it in its entirety?
in entirety.
What line was
So
that again?
line?
Peter?
1767.
So that would be, hold on, I want to make sure I'm getting to this
To
right.
make sure it's a- is
When
the
you say it's
physics
strike in
thing-
its entirety, you're taking just the new
The
out?
new spent.
Or everything? Because there already is 4950 in there for,
Okay, but is it strictly just for the physics day
the
field trip?
Reduce it
physics, the physics is
$8,700.
This is we want to
$8,700.
reduce by the new, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll rephrase or reword my
Okay.
original motion to reduce line 1767 from the new $8,700 to $4,950.
Okay, so from 13,650 to 4,950.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's been seconded by Peter. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, so I think when the school presented, I was really taken aback that they're asking the community to fund this, where last year, I think, if I remember correctly, the students did not go on the field trip, and they missed an opportunity to rally as a community, as a school, to do some fundraising, to actually have these kids go on a field trip. It was that important. So to me, now asking for funding because it's that important, I think it's disingenuous, to be honest with you. So I'm not in favor of it because they should have thought out of the box if it was that important to do some fundraising. And I would have contributed to some of that, to be honest with you. But it was never presented to me, and therefore I think it was disingenuous and they missed an opportunity to actually have these kids go on a field trip if it was that important that they stressed, so.
Laura?
I don't love the idea of striking it to like teach a lesson, which is kind of what your motion sounds like. I don't know if that's your intention or not. But just because they missed an opportunity, I think the field trip is important. I know it's something that kids look forward to and many towns do it, if I'm remembering correctly. So I don't think that's the right reason behind the motion, if that's what you meant.
Brian?
Yeah, as a follow-up, I mean, that's not my intent to be malicious or malicious about that. And that's why I wanted to actually strike the entire line item, because again, there's other creative ways, and what I heard from the schools, that they have done a lot of fundraising to support other activities. So why is this an exception where they didn't allow the kids to go last year because they didn't have the monies, but yet now they're saying, okay, it's that important, we're gonna ask the community to actually increase their taxation and their funding to it. So to me, I'm really wrestling with it, and again, they missed the opportunity. And I'm still inclined to reduce the entire thing, but I think some reduction is warranted, to be honest with you.
Okay, Olivia, then Allison, then Peter.
I think when the high school presented this to us again this year, because I know we argued about this last year as well, I think Kim McCann explained that it wasn't that they didn't hear us or value the opinions of the people on the board, but rather they still felt that this was a need that wasn't met, and that this was a learning opportunity that reached a really wide range of science students throughout the high school. So rather than it being kind of a disingenuous or disregard for what some of the community felt, I think it was more them kind of sticking with it and saying, I know it wasn't something that could work last year, but this year it's still a priority of ours to get these kids on this field trip. They did also explain that they do participate in different kinds of fundraising throughout the year for different programs throughout the school. So it's not that they're just asking for money and not doing any kind of fundraising relief to help kids.
Allison?
I feel like we keep doing this a disservice, calling it a field trip. I mean, yes, it is, but I think everyone has in their minds this idea, like a field trip is a trip to the beach at the end of school, which my kids have gone on. If we said we wanted to spend $8,700 for this amazing science program for these kids, no one would balk at it. But this is so much more than a field trip to, go look at leaves in the woods. It's for some of these kids, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really see this science that they're learning firsthand in a huge learning environment. They're not going to Canopy Lake to ride the roller coaster. They're learning what they can do with the stuff that we're teaching them in the real world. And I think for that, it's so much more than just a field trip that science kids want. We spend tons of money on, different athletic things and drama, but this is you talk about wanting them to learn the basics. This is about as basic learning as you're going to get. They are not going to get the same type of learning from any other situation, I would venture to guess.
Peter, did you have something?
It was just a quick question. So this came up last year. Was this something that was funded through the school in the past directly? I forget.
When the budget failed, it
Right.
went to default. So this is new spending proposed.
But in the past, has it been funded?
Since COVID, they have not gone on the field trip, is my impression.
Yes, that's correct.
Brian?
Well, that was my clarifying question, like last year, they did not go. And respectfully, Olivia, if they are doing fundraising, obviously they didn't focus on this field trip to fund the kids to go. So to me, I'm struggling with it because, and it might be a principle thing, but I'm not in favor of increasing this line item or this appropriation if they had plenty of opportunity to do some kind of creative, out-of-box thinking and to fund it. If it was that important, which I'm not saying it's not. I think there's value there, but to extend it to the citizens for a nominal amount, again, I think it's not prudent, it's not appropriate.
So as somebody who was kind of a science-y history kind of nerd in high school, not nerd, but that was my interest.
Nerd's a cool word.
I think it's really, no, it's cool.
Yeah, take it.
I actually find a lot of value in something like this, and I asked during the presentation, I was like, is this an ability to pay issue? Because if it is, then I would be like, yes, let's fund it. But I think what they said was, we're paying for everybody to go from the budget. So I agree with Brian that if there's a family that's able to pay, they should pay for it, not the taxpayers. And so I would be willing even to go $1,000 or $1,500, so that if there is a family that is in true need and they cannot fund it themselves, there's money in there for that. But I don't think we should pay for everybody to go if there's an ability for a family to pay. So that's kind of my 2 cents there. Peter?
Just really quickly, I know we've already said this before, but before Jared says it, technically, we can strike this. They can move money from somewhere else and still do this, right? So
Yep.
just want to be clear, we're not actually creating the policy for the school of what they're going to or going not to do.
Yep.
Just want to make sure it's clear when we're actually deciding on how we want to move forward.
Jared, and then I'll go Frank.
Well, Peter, that's not what I was going to say, but thank you
thought
for
you
bringing
were
it up
gonna say
again.
it this time.
This is a learning opportunity for a specific skill set. Are we going to remove the field trips that we take to the Maple Farm? Are we going to remove the field trips that our elementary school kids go for Native Americans? And looking at what we actually had here, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago when they go to Squam Lake or in that area? This is a continuation of lifelong learning and an opportunity to understand, as an example, what's a centripetal force? I love what Allison was saying. This is an opportunity there. You have to do the calculation. Yeah, you're going to be able to actually go on the ride, but you're going to have to do the calculation of the centripetal force of this ride. So this is just another way of having lifelong learning, and because we're trying to add it back after the COVID phenomenon, we can have that debate, but the philosophy is, why would we want to remove this and not other things that we've done for our students, for our field trips? So I'll just throw that out there as well.
Israel, then Frank.
I just want to make it clear, my daughter went in 2021, 2022, so it has been since.
Okay, that's not, okay. So they have been going.
During the presentations, I thought it was shared with us that they had not gone since COVID. That's what I heard. So I thought maybe you heard.
I heard that too, yeah.
I thought it was 2022 that they were.
Okay.
So they did go.
Great.
They didn't go last year, and because they didn't go last year, it's considered new spend to bring them back this year, or the next year.
Okay, Frank?
How many people are they estimating go on the trip?
300. It was like 290, I did the math. I think it was like $30 per student.
Yeah, I think that was one of the issues too, is the huge increase at the park itself for the kids
Yeah.
to get in. There's not a discount on that, so it's pricey.
So yeah, just to the point of, I love science. I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor. But if it's so worthwhile to them, it's $30 a person. Go ahead. Why wouldn't you pay $30 per person and just self-fund it?
Elizabeth, Olivia, then Laura.
Can we just get some clarification on, because, Jared raises a good point about why are we treating this field trip different from others? Are we treating it different from others? What is the policy? When my kids went to school here, the parents paid for the field trips. Has that changed? Or what do we do for those other field trips?
For some of them, we do. So for, like you see for the dues and fees, if you want to go to a state competition for music, that's something that you have to pay for. But is that an extracurricular activity, or is physics part of the core curriculum? So
Well, but if they go to the Maple Farm, is every parent chipping in for the elementary students?
We subsidize, so if you look at like the elementary schools, you'll see that there's a certain percentage of dollars that go to help towards that particular field trip. And that's
To
it. I was
offset
in-
the cost?
Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, the most expensive part is busing
Yeah.
for almost any field trip.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Laura?
To speak to Elizabeth's point and a couple of things that people have said, I don't know for sure, but I think because this sounds fun, we're treating it differently. If this sounded boring, I don't think we'd be talking about it. That's all.
Oh, going to the Maple Farm was pretty fun.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
Olivia?
I think with the idea that why don't people just pay it, it's coming from a lot of the same people that, and it's a very real issue in town, that people are struggling to pay for things like groceries and just basic utilities. So when you add something like a $30 addition to that, and there could be multiple children because it's physical science and physics, that adds up quickly. So I don't think the entire line should be erased, or the new spending should be erased.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you raised a good question, Jared, and I think this is something I need to learn more. Do we have a listing of how many field trips or types of field trips there are, how they're funded, or even subsidized? To give us a little more context into this particular line item?
Yeah, we used to go through each one from, during the school board process, we'd go through each one and we'd fund them, but we've changed our policy that if they're reoccurring field trips, we kind of just do a 1 for all of them. I think we could probably grab some of them, but, we'll put it add it to the list of things that we want to
That
provide
would
to this
cost more
committee.
than $9,000 for me to find it.
Yeah.
I
But
I'm
one,
just kidding.
one thing to note, and this is important too, and I failed to say this earlier. So I'm kind of ad-libbing a little bit additionally. But, we do have PFTs that do offset some of these costs. So, when I talk about the Maple School, the middle school, or talking about the elementary schools, the PFTs are chipping in. I'm not sure if they're chipping in for this particular event, but that is something that we also look at as well. So there is some fundraising offset that
Okay.
goes along with these.
And as a follow, and for further clarity, I think it'd be good to know too, I hope I didn't lose my thought. What is considered a field trip that's tied to core curriculum? I'm not sure if you alluded to it, like this is tied, physics is tied to physics, that makes sense, but again, it'd be good to know that additional context and clarity, because that does affect things. But again, I still stand behind my motion, because again, it's not because it's the type of thing, it's just I think there's a missed opportunity, and I'll be very blunt. It's hard for me to absorb that there's an increase here where it almost, I'm not gonna put words in their mouth, but it almost seems like, well, if we pass it on to the voters, they're good for it because they're an open ATM machine. And I'm not saying that they're doing that, it comes across that way, it's like, well, they'll absorb it because we'll put it to the community. And it's up to the community to vote on it, for sure, if that's part of the default, but I'm still wrestling with it because of that. Again, it was that important, they should have done something to make sure the students got to that field trip. Like I said, think out of the box, be creative, don't expect the taxpayer to fund it.
Do you have an answer?
No, I have a question. My question is that me or having staff go back and figure out all this, this seems kind of philosophical in nature. It's like, I don't know what you're going to glean from whether or not we pay X amount for elementary, all that stuff. Some of, based upon what I've heard, and again, this is self-serving, because it'll be me or someone else who's gonna have to spend hours tracking this stuff down. Do you really want this information as a committee? And if you do, we'll get it for you, but there's a cost for all that too. So if you feel that you're gonna vote yea or nay, then do you really need it, or or not?
Okay. Laura?
Thank you. A couple things, so I know, and Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, that the elementary schools and the middle school do have those parent groups, the high school does not. So it's possible that, as, if we're looking at the budget as a whole, a lot more of those younger kid field trips are being more funded. Would you say that's accurate?
PFT kicks in significantly for those.
Yes, okay. And to Olivia's point about, if people are really strapped, it's not just $30. That can make a big effect. But if you divide, I don't know, 13,000 by how many taxpayers, then it's 0.0 what on the tax bill? No one's gonna feel 0.0 something, but 300 people could feel $30 or more if they have more than one kid in science. I think the value that the kids get, the school gets, is worth the minute amount this would cost. And then we don't have the thing where, and I don't even know if this could happen in this case, where you have to figure, okay, this kid says they can't pay for it, this kid can pay for it. Like, how does that even work? And I'm asking that legitimately because I don't know how it works when some kids get assistance, some don't. Do you have to ask them if, that part I don't know.
So there's a motion on the floor. Is there anything new that we need to add to this? Olivia?
I don't think it's in our purview to decide what field trips are funded in who goes on them. You know, I get that we're arguing over the $8,700 again. But if we have strong feelings about what field trips are appropriate or logistical parts of that, then I think that as community members, we need to go to the school board meeting or whoever decides on field trips.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to go back to Scott's question, and since I made the motion, I don't want to put more on your plate. I don't think it'd be prudent to get a list of all the field trips. I think for me, going back to this line item and this particular field trip, if you can comment to, is it this $8,700, is that fully going to pay the trip, or is it, this is subsidized?
I don't know if I know the answer to that.
My statement will answer that.
Okay.
Brian, I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
No, please, in order, that's cool.
If you're answering the question.
Oh, yeah, so, well, it's through a statement, not a question, though.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to cut off Peter, or bump him. Remember, this is an expenditure line. So these are the expenses that we have. So if we're talking about revenues or anything else, that could still come in. We could still generate funds for this, but this is an expenditure line that says we would like to spend $8,700, and maybe there'll be a revenue for it, maybe not, I don't know. We don't have anything in place right now, so I will concede to that.
Okay.
But if we're going to spend the money, it shall be here, whether we're funding it through individuals or whether we're funding it through taxpayer sources. So this doesn't tie to the revenues. This is just the expenditure, and I'd leave with that.
Okay. Peter?
I will say, the way that I heard what Brian was saying in response to this presentation about the 8,700, and I know I yelled about the 8,700, or I spoke strongly about us spending so much time about talking about it. I will say philosophically, in terms of how I like to approach my work here on Budget Committee, is I want to feel like I'm hearing, okay, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to accomplish, this is why it means so much to me. And I will also say that in hearing that portion of that presentation, because most of the time I was like, yep, great, I didn't feel like I heard like, okay, we got a default budget last year, and it was just like, okay, there wasn't that work put into like, how can we come up with something? Can we come up with something? I didn't hear it. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but all I can rely on is the information I hear when I'm here at Budget Committee. So that's the same thing I would do with any other department that comes and presents something to me. If it's like, I just don't feel the argument at the table. Maybe you have it, but you're not presenting it to me. And I have to say, I kind of agree that I didn't hear the argument that they had done anything in terms of problem solved or thought creatively of how they could keep that during a default budget year. So I would lean towards saying, yeah, this is one of those things that maybe we just move forward and we just strike.
Okay, I'm hoping to spend less than an hour total on this. But
Let me do the math on how much that $8,000 cost us, though.
All right, is everyone ready? All right, all those in favor of Brian's motion to cut reference line 1767 from 13,650 back to 4,950, please raise your hand now if you're in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you are opposed to the motion, raise your hand. Laura Stevens, Jared Talbot,
You're gonna back, no.
Allison DeCesare, Olivia Welcher et al. If you'd like to abstain, raise your hand.
I don't know what's going on.
Elizabeth
with this
DeBrule,
thing.
Kelly Boyer, Samantha Kurtz.
Wait a minute, 3 abstains?
Yeah,
Wait, so we're just striking back to the 4, something,
back to the
okay.
4,
Yeah.
yep.
Hold on, I'm trying to count votes. Who abstained? Samantha?
Elizabeth, I abstained.
There's 3.
And Kelly.
I believe it was 743. 14 of us.
8 was it?
Yeah, it's 8.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, 843. So Brian's motion carries.
I have a question about it. This is,
Yeah.
that's fine, but I have a question. So do we know or do we care what else is in that line that we're keeping? Or no, we're just really stuck on this field trip? Like, does anyone want to find out what else comes from here?
You want to cut the line further?
I don't know, but we were so stuck on the 8
Use a
whatever.
stipend. School board stipend line.
School
you
board
can take care of
stipends in
all
that
that.
Yeah, we were so stuck on the one thing that it's interesting, no one was curious about the rest of it.
So, for the rest of it, to answer your question, fees to support field trips, $2,700. New Hampshire Scholars, $1,000. Art workshop and entrance fee to support student learning experiences, $1,250.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a couple more pages left, so let's go to page 69. Okay, and then we have page 70 and a little bit on 71, so I'll just give the committee some time. Brian?
Just a quick question, sorry. Page 69, row 1787, this is water and sewer. I see a new increase of 4,000. That's just rates?
Yeah, sewer.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was wondering-
Yeah, you'll see that on the town side, I think, too.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly?
1806, the grounds maintenance, the $3,000 of new spend.
Here, it's just simply that there's a lot to do, and
It's matching actuals.
we're trying to keep up with all of the stuff around here, especially, and then it's probably saw the same thing on Mountain View. There's just a lot of brush cutting and stuff that our maintenance folks can't do. We need to hire professionals.
Anything else on the high school budget? So this is still in our hands, so, we finished, but we're gonna look at the town side, and then we're gonna go from there, so, moving forward.
Chair, oh, go ahead.
Yes, Peter.
So I had already noticed this earlier.
Okay.
So it was, I'm looking at 1817. In the present, I tried going through the presentations as we were going through. Noteworthy changes. We noted the line right below that during presentations, the increase. What's the deal with the big jump in the default for that line?
Which line?
So this is 1817. 30,000.
1817 actuals. And if you look at, so what happened was in your packet, I did a budget transfer because the actuals are very high for bus transportation for athletics and for everything. So you're seeing like a 25% increase from our prior contract. So that's the reason for that. So when you're transporting athletes to Portsmouth, it could be $450 for the bus ride.
In addition, we had not fully funded the transportation for the middle school athletics. We are now.
Yeah. But that's not in that line, it's in another one, but it is simply the cost of bus transportation across the board, whether it's special ed, regular ed, athletics, field trip transportation, it's all up over 20% from our prior contract. We had a really good, solid contract.
So 2024 is a different contract
Yeah.
year. 2025, the actual, we don't see the 2025 actuals on here, obviously, yet,
Right.
but those actuals that you're seeing in 2025 are actually much higher than what you budgeted
higher.
for in 2025.
That's a line that we have to collectively look at going forward. And it also, for the high school, it's very tough to budget for sometimes because in different sports, you play different divisions. So if you're playing Merrimack, Central, Memorial, no big deal. if you're, and I know, Richard, you played football, I mean, if you're playing all of a sudden all the Seacoast teams, Rochester and Timberlane, et cetera, now all of your bus rides are not $180, they're all 500 plus. So it's those, and those things kind of add up, so it really depends upon who you're playing, and if you are there, or they're playing here. So if you have the benefit of you know, Portsmouth or like Rochester coming here to play a game, we don't have that massive bus cost. And then when you have like, say, a football program and cheer, you got 2 buses going there, no problem.
I just have a quick question off
Go ahead.
of what Scott said. So I'm sorry if you just answered this, are the kids ever asked to fundraise for athletic transportation?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right,
It goes to my point, so if I could.
okay.
There's a reason I asked about it.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
No, well, so we just spent a long time cutting $8,000 for a field trip. Nobody blinked an eye, and I know this comment can be taken in either direction. Nobody blinked an eye at paying over $100,000 so kids can go to sports. I don't know what that message is either. I know it can go either way, but that's just the comment I wanted to make.
Okay. Peter,
But,
did you have something, or?
no, I was saying, first off, I wanted to know if we were talking about any type of actual new spending or just increasing costs for what we were already doing. But again, I think it is important that we're noting that, right, I don't recall a part of the presentation that was explaining what the importance of this was to the school as well,
The
in
importance
terms
of
of
what?
our athletes.
Oh, that's a great question for me to answer, right? Like,
Go ahead.
You're putting me, I don't know, every student is important and all their experiences are important. I mean, you do the funding for them, and then we deal with the budgets and stuff. So that's an unfair question, I think, to ask me in a way. Like, I don't know, we have had a historical budget for athletics, field trip transportation, et cetera. I don't know the genesis of this other stuff, but, I don't know, Jared, I have to punt to you on that one.
I mean, if we want to institute a pay-to-play, if that's what the budget committee policy wants to be, back to the school board, we will take a look at that.
I feel like we're, okay. Sam, go ahead.
Thanks. So I just want to point out to like that statement, right? Like all of the, I shouldn't say all, I know that, I'm going to say the majority of the high school sports teams do have some kind of booster club. Does that money specifically go to transportation? Probably not. It goes to other stuff within the purview of that sport, right? Whether it's like equipment, I don't know what they buy. But this appears to be the cost of driving the bus, of what the bus company is going to charge us. And is it more, it's more expensive. I don't think that makes it any less important. I abstained on my last vote. If we opted to cut this, I would abstain on this vote as well. I mean, I think Scott made a great point. Every student is important, no matter if they are really into physics or really into football or both, right? Because kids can be both. But I guess to like Brian's kind of point, like the kids that utilize this budget line of athletic transportation are already fundraising. If they needed to fundraise, I mean, Jared just said that we're now paying for the middle school buses too. I love that because the middle school's parents were having to drive their kids all over the place. And I'm sure that if we told the high school kids, hey, you're gonna have to drive all your kids, like they would probably do it, but I don't think that would be good for our community either. So.
And the driver thing was because of drivers, we just couldn't get drivers from Mountain View. It was not a funding issue. We had the funds, we just didn't have the drivers.
Okay.
And now the bus company's been able to recruit and get more drivers, so we've reinstituted it. So I just wanted that.
Thank you, I was misinformed.
Yeah, I just wanted that to be.
Thank you.
Just clarified.
Elizabeth?
I know you think we're wandering far afield, and I don't disagree with you. But, I mean, I will say, I mean, my question is, you mentioned pay to play.
aren't some sports already pay to play? I mean, for a long time, the lacrosse parents had to pay for their own coach for their high school team and pay for a whole bunch of things, while football, everything was paid for. And I don't know if the school board has changed its policy since then, but it's kind of the same thing as with the field trips. I think there needs to be a policy, and it needs to be uniformly applied across all co-curriculars and all field trips, and whether it's a shared responsibility, or the school pays for everything, or the parents pay for everything, I think it's got to be equally applied.
For the policy for the school board, I believe it's any new clubs or sports have to be self-sufficient for 3 years, and then it becomes part of the school to
Budget for it.
budget for those items.
Okay,
So we do have a policy for that.
okay, well, that's great.
New stuff.
Okay.
Olivia?
I just wanted to say I wasn't saying that the kids playing sports should be paying to pay for sports, just to reiterate that I didn't think that kids that wanted to do science should be paying for science either. And going with what Elizabeth just said, that there needs to be something more concrete about how this is all handled.
And I can assure you, because Jared and I met with booster clubs, what was that, 6 months ago?
Yeah.
They do a ton. And I'm not just talking about athletic booster clubs, I'm talking about performing arts, you name it. Parents are doing fundraising, so yes, at the elementary schools, you have your PTAs, PFDs, your MVPs. Here at the high school, it's a lot of booster clubs, so for all those groups that I just mentioned. So the school district, mindful of a lot of what you said, Brian, today, there is a ton of fundraising going on. I mean, I'm like blown away by, I have to get reports from these booster clubs every year. There's a lot of money being generated to help students for a wide variety of things, from sports to, like I said, performing arts, you name it. So please, I don't want anybody getting the impression that the school district is like fully funding all these co-curriculars, because we are not.
And we're even going further than that from a policy perspective. We're looking at actually trying to implement a policy, it's currently in policy review, of being able to have donors. So sports donors, to be able to do
Any
that.
donors, for that matter, yeah.
Yeah, they want to pay for a theater, for a play, throw in a couple $100 so that we can get some additional clothing. Absolutely. So we don't have a policy for that, so we are looking at policies
That's great.
to implement
generate
for this
revenues
year.
from-
Because, we understand, from a school board perspective, we understand, and I know I hear this board as well as all of our constituents that we have, taxes are bad, and taxes are necessary, but we have to look at creative ways for revenue. Booster clubs have been great. It's those moms, dads, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents that are trying to help out for the students. Can we do more? Yes. And the board in the past has not wanted to try to have donations coming in from companies or from people. We're trying to change that now. So, maybe we will put somebody's name on a brochure if they're going to help pay for
It's a sponsorship policy. We
Yeah.
don't have
That's good.
one. We're working on that. And that'll be in the boards, that will
Hopefully
hopefully
it's coming up
generate.
sometime soon.
Generate revenues, and, it's little, if you go to some other schools, you'll see that there are company names, on their scoreboard or in their gymnasiums, they're in theaters, et cetera. And the board policy, there's no board policy to even allow that, but it is a way to bring in some revenue.
And Scott corrected me, sponsorships, not donations. We can accept
We do
donations
it,
right
and we
now.
have, right? It's
But the
it's the
sponsorship.
sponsorships and the advertising, that's needed, and it's not going to be a massive thing, but it's gonna help, I think. But that's not gonna be that's gonna be his decision, and Jack and others on the school board, if they're gonna adopt that type of policy, to bring in, sponsorships if they so choose, so.
Brian?
I can make a comment and I can make a motion. How's that?
I'm not ready for that motion. I need to say something, but go ahead, you go.
Oh, well then, I'm just gonna say, I commend you for guys thinking about that as a school board, because I think that's important. If that's put in place, that potentially could lessen the burden on the taxpayers, so I love that.
Okay, so our next meeting is November 19th. We'll be going over the town side. We're going away from years past where before, correct me if I'm wrong, we had department heads come in, present their budget, and then we would deliberate right there. And I think the town wants to move away from that, so we're gonna have different meetings. So Tuesday, November 19th, we're going to hear from the overall town budget, sewer enterprise fund, town hall, public works, and parks and rec. And then the November 21st, we're going to hear from police department, fire department, the library, and any special articles. And then we'll move on to deliberating after that. I think it is better that we hear, and then we're allowed to kind of marinate in some of the ideas that are presented there. December 5th, I have to cancel that meeting, so we have extra meetings later, so we'll just push everything back a little bit. That'll kind of give us a break, so we don't have to have 2 meetings a week. We don't have to rush on this, so December 5th is canceled. Danielle will send something out, and then we'll continue with our regular meetings.
So maybe I missed it, but I didn't see any kind of a summary sheet on the town side.
That
Was
is
there
coming
one?
on,
Who get it?
yeah, you'll get it. So the 2025 budget overview, Derek and Danielle will come in and give us a holistic what happened on the town side. Have you guys finished your budget completely?
Well, I mean, it's never complete
It's never
until we
complete,
vote on
but
it.
I was trying.
But the select board has done initial deliberations, and we have some other things that we're waiting on some more information on. We'll probably talk about tomorrow, but, yeah, it's
Okay.
still moving. We still have a lot of numbers that'll come in and impact things, I'm sure.
Okay, and then there's also like a collective bargaining agreement, I think they're buttoning up that and things like that, so, I will see everybody on the 19th. Now, Brian, do you have a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Moved by Brian, second by Doug. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? We're adjourned at 9:38.